Good morning, everyone. If you can hear me, type in good morning. Morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ritu. Owen, Sonia. What is up? Hannah, nice to see you again. Julia, welcome back. Ariana. It's so neat to have so many familiar students. What is up, the rest of the folks? Chahong, what is up? All right, my friends, let's get started. Nav, good morning. All right, so we have an action-packed class once again. I'm not checking, by the way, when you're turning in your entries, but be smart about your entries. Turn them in the night before, all right? Aisha, good morning. I just don't want to run into problems, and neither should you, and you don't want to botch this stuff, so be smart about it if you're not already. If you are, then I commend you. Bump knuckles, that's terrific. Keep it up. Chen Hong, welcome. All right, so where the heck are we? Let's look at our main document first, and then what we're going to be doing is as follows. We'll be doing, Cameron, what's up? Ariana's driving through the mountains. Holy cow. We live in a weird world where my student is driving through the mountains as I'm teaching this class. This is just unreal. And so it must be like what, you're like listening to AM radio or something, like, right? I'm speaking. Good morning, everyone in BC. I'm Marc Champagne, your philosopher for this morning. Today, we're going to be studying. That would be kind of cool, though, right? The internet is unreal. Well, COVID is unreal. Everything's unreal. It's just messing with me. Best podcast. I'm honored, Ariana. Don't type while you're driving, though. You're not driving, Ariana, right? Because I don't want you talking in the chat bar just to make you happy. Just to make me happy, right? Because I want, like, alive students are good. Best way to get grades, a necessary though not sufficient condition for getting good grades is like being alive. So that's a thing. All right, so epistemology. All right, no, not driving. Good. What are we doing? Well, first of all, we'll do a preliminary setup and overview. Actually, that's going to spend quite a bit of time. We have a packet that we're going to read together. So remember, one of the things that I promised that we would do when we get together is the first read's always the hardest. I'm going to be with you for that first reading. So you get to have an audiobook, if you will. I put on my reading voice, and it's an interactive audiobook. So if at any point while we're talking about something or reading, something's unclear, you let me know. I mean, it has to seriously be unclear because I don't want to get sidetracked. I'm always keeping an eye on the time. But if it's seriously something that you want to have sort of, you want me to slow down and clarify a little bit, that's great. Some of these ideas, they're just hard. There's nothing wrong with you. So I just want to give just want to sort of comment a little bit on the psychology of what it means to encounter difficult ideas for the first time. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, there's nothing wrong with any of you. If any of you on the first attempt, right? So when we're reading together, when we're having a class, you feel slightly overwhelmed, you feel a little dumb, your head scratching, you're a little confused, and it's tiring. That's all good stuff. That's normal. That's to be expected. That means there's something there, right? It's nothing wrong with you. The ease and the familiarity, comes with time. So rereads and rewrites in philosophy fix a lot of things, but always the first write and the first read are always the scariest. So I'm going to go with you on the first one. But before I do that, I want to take some time and I want to set it up because this reading is going to be it's going to be there's going to be a lot there. So I'm going to take it a little slower. And remember, I'm not assuming much prior knowledge in philosophy. Even when I asked everyone if they knew a little bit of Descartes, we took the time to sort of canvas Descartes' main ideas in epistemology at any rate. And so what I'm going to do is I'll set up where our conversation is going to happen. And when I mean where conceptually. And I'll overview a little bit. I'll just preview what the main ideas are going to be from the packet so that when we get to reading it together after having done all this work, and this would take a while, this could take about like 45 minutes, I estimate, right? By the time we do the Peirce packet 3, it'll fall into place. Now you'll hear it from the horse's mouth, you'll hear it from Peirce, and you'll be like, okay, now I get all of this, right? And it really hopefully will have helped you in a way that if you would have just tackled the reading on its own, then you probably would have been a little confused. And after we're done, then we get to have a bit of a breather. It's going to be nice. We're going to watch a 15-minute video conversation. So there's going to be these two guys are going to be talking, and it's going to be a fairly high-level conversation. It's going to be nice that you're going to understand and follow that conversation, I think. If you've done everything right up to this point, it'll make sense to you, and it'll be a recap, not necessarily anything new that will come in that conversation, but it'll be a nice summary, and it's a different feel to just have a video of people talking to each other. We'll watch that video through Big Blue Button, and it will be available also on Moodle. So anything that's useful to you, I put the files on Moodle. And so when I watch the videos on Big Blue Button, the video can be a little choppy, which is no big deal because it's just a bunch of talking heads. It's just like people sitting and talking. So it's not like you're going to miss much. It's not like an action sequence in a Mission Impossible movie or something. But I will make the full video available on Moodle after. So if you want to watch it again, you can watch it. It'll be a little more smooth, right? And then what we're going to do is very quickly at the end, try to apply all of this. So I'll give you kind of a case study to see if you understand the ideas and that you can gauge firsthand the kind of work they can do for us in philosophy. Like the whole point of this is to apply it, right? It makes me laugh because I gave a talk, I presented at a conference called Applying Peirce. And I mean, it's funny that we even have to say that, right? The whole point of Peirce's philosophy is to apply it to something, right? And so we want to apply the pragmatic maxim. By the end of today's class, you'll know what that is. By the end of today's class, you'll have a sense of what pragmatism is and specifically what the pragmatic maxim is, right? Which is a big element. If you've looked up Peirce, what's up, Reese? And so, and then we'll have another victory lap. We can cross some items on our main document. And if we did everything right, and I'm almost certain we will have, then all of the items in the ice cube tray box for epistemology will be crossed. That's going to be great. So I think we have 2 more items that we haven't discussed yet. And we'll go over some of the other items that we've seen before. All right. Is that good? Does that seem like a good way to spend our time? If everyone's good to go, you let me know. If that seems clear, let me know. Tell me good to go so I can have a bite of my oatmeal. Load up a little bit. Good to go. Aisha's good to go. Sonia, what's up? Welcome to the group. All right. I've got myself some coffee, some eggs. No worries. All right, let's go. Let's get started. All right, so where are we? Let's have a look at our main document. The week-by-week breakdown is very helpful because I always want us to keep in mind where we've been and where we're going at any point in time. So here we are. We are week 3. We're doing epistemology, the second part. There's a bunch of notions here that by the end of the class we'll be able to cross some. There's a few that you know. There's a few that you don't know. We're going to be reading the Peirce Packet 3 this week, right? You've just turned in your second entry. The second entry is on anything that happened, obviously, before you turned it in this morning. So it's on this. You don't have an entry to turn in this week. So for the next 6 days and so on, you'll notice here, this is blank. There's nothing here, right? The entries, I just want to point out, although I spread them out throughout the term, the reason why they're spread out like this is to kind of give a little bit of a break, and then, you know, so the work is spread evenly. They don't have to be on anything that pertains to this role. So for instance, you could imagine the third entry, right, could be on this, whatever's in this row over here, but it doesn't have to be. All right. The entries can be on anything that has to do with this course that we've discussed. All right. So the entries just have to do with you, changing your mind about something. You reporting to me how this course made you think and trying to clarify that. It can be that for your third entry has to do with something that we said in week 2. That's fine. I'm fine with that. You understand? There's nothing there that I'm spreading them out, and I'm expecting that as we go, for instance, when we start doing philosophy of science, there'll be some really wild and wacky and thought-provoking ideas. I'm suspecting that a lot of the entries will be on the stuff that we'll be doing in week 4, right? So the third entry might be about that, but it could just as easily be on stuff that we're doing today. And it could just as easily be on stuff that we did the week before, just as it could just as easily be on stuff, although we didn't do a ton in the first week. All right, so long as it has to do with the course content. Is that clear, everyone? As far as the entries, I have no constraints. If that's clear, type in clear. If you have a question about that, ask your question. And remember, I need to see you from your feedback box, right? Because that's my only contact with you. And also, I need to know if you got a question, like it's cool, right? It's the time to ask. We always take a few minutes before class, right? And what that means is you've got a lot of freedom to genuinely get engaged with the course content. Like go where you're excited. Like I'm assuming that there's going to be some parts because we're surveying. It's an overview of Peirce's entire system. So we're doing epistemology. We're going to do philosophy of science for 3 weeks and so on. I'm assuming that there are different parts that are going to get you excited to different degrees. Go where your heart leads you, right? And that's great because it means you'll remember that stuff forever, right? So don't try to impress me with anything. The point really is just to learn, right? There's nothing I particularly want to hear. I do want to hear honesty. I want to hear clear honesty. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense. That's what I'm looking for, right? Speak directly and be honest. And it's very difficult to be clear about how we are in our thinking at a given stage. And next week, we're starting philosophy of science. I want to give you a heads up. In my estimate, throughout this entire semester, these are going to be the ideas that are going to probably be the hardest and also the most original, and that might reshape, if you wrap your mind around them, that might reshape a lot of the way you see things. And so be prepared. And I've got an exciting class prepared for you next week. I'm actually giddy about it. I know what's going up. I know what I'm going to teach you, and I'm thrilled to death with it. So just be mindful. Come with an open mind, and it's going to be very exciting. So that's where we are. And remember, we have a midterm at the end of June. So just stay on the lookout for that. All right, and that will cover everything above this line. Right. So there you go. All right, let's get moving. Everyone is clear. And here we are. Preliminary setup and overview. All right, last week and the week before, we talked about seeking the truth. We talked about an analogy with, we did some exercises, astronomy and so on. And the truth is what we're trying to figure out, that bullseye, hidden the bullseye. All right, so let's get started. Coffee. True or false? Tell me. I've heard back from 3 people. What's up, people? I want to hear back from you. If I'm not hearing back from you, why am I not hearing back from you? I want to hear back from you in some fashion. Tell me what's going on. Hey, Andrew, no worries. Some people are saying true. Some people are saying false. Reese says neither. So which is it, true or false? Coffee. Coffee, folks. Coffee. And of course, I'm a philosopher, right? So if anyone says true, I'll ask why. If anyone says false, I'll ask why. People are really, I don't know, what's your degree of confidence in saying true or false? I'm not sure. Some people answer coffee, exclamation mark. I'm not sure what's being stated. Arjun, is something being stated at all? Let's ask everyone. I'm sure says, I'm not sure what's being stated. Is anything being stated? What's on the screen right now? I mean, what's this? Coffee. It seems the statement is coffee. Yeah. It's a word, right? We agree, just coffee. It's subjective. I don't know about that. Beautiful word, I agree. I know what coffee is. I mean, I'm drinking coffee as we speak. Coffee's not subjective. I can drink it. If you don't believe me, I'll splash them in your face. All right, so true or false? It doesn't seem to make much sense. Let's go for this. Hot. True or false? Also very true. Like, what is that? Okay, folks who are saying true and very true, like, what does that even, like, where are you getting this? Like, right now, like, what does that even mean? What's hot what? Like right now, for instance, it's raining, it's kind of cold outside, or like my fridge is cold. Hot. Like, neither doesn't make sense. Andrew's saying doesn't make sense. Let's slow down on that for a second, right? Andrew's saying doesn't make sense. It's not that it doesn't make sense. We recognize the word. So let's go slow now. You can stop. I'm going to stop messing with you. All right. So now I'm closing the tap on the provocation for a moment. Let's just go slow down a little bit. So Andrew says doesn't make sense. We agree that we recognize these words. Can we agree on that? Type agree if you agree. That hot is a word you recognize? Yeah, cool. Likewise for coffee, right? That's a word you recognize, right? All right. And presumably you acquired this word, when you were young, and you know what it refers to, right? You know what we mean by hot. You know what we mean by coffee. Like, but if I ask you true or false, like, so if I take this word over here, hot, right, and I go like capital period, a capital letter period. I just go hot. That's all I say is hot. And I ask true or false. It seems like there's not enough for me to start answering that question. It seems misplaced. It seems weird. Can we all agree that this was weird? That what just happened, what your prof's doing is weird? It's messed up? Yeah. Yeah, that's the correct answer is something's wrong, right? Something's wrong here. Something, it's a bit of a, it's like if I ask you, it's what we call a category mistake or something like that. It's like if I ask you, is 8 happy? And you say, excuse me? I say, is 8 happy? You mean 8 as in the letter 8? Yeah. Is 8 happy? You'd be like, strange to answer yes. Yes, it is, right? 8 is happy. Or no, 8 is not happy, right? It seems misplaced to ask that, right? Likewise, if I go and I say hot, true or false, right? Or if I say coffee, true or false, that seems misplaced. That seems to be in the order of asking, 6. Joy is 6 joyful, right? Or something like that. You'd be like, well, sex is joyful, but 6 is not joyful, right? It seems misplaced, right? What about this now? So I'm going to take the words you're familiar with, all right? I'm going to string them together in a different way now. The coffee is hot. True or false? I don't have enough information. I agree with Andrew and I agree with Reese. All right. Let's assume, right? So a lot hinges on which coffee we're talking about. Do we agree? Right? When we say the coffee, like which one, right? We got to pick out a particular coffee. Like we're not sure which one we're picking out, right? Let's assume that's fixed because this is what we call a context sensitive term. It's an indexical term, right? We need to be able to pick up like when we're talking about the coffee, which one we're talking about. But let's assume we know that. So let's fix that. Let's assume that there's some background knowledge. This is a fragment of a conversation, right? And there's something that happened before, right? The conversation is presumably things that are going to happen after. And as part of that conversation, we can fix what we mean by the coffee. We know which one we're talking about, and we're asking whether or not it's hot. Can we agree that this is at least less weird? Can we agree on that? This is starting to make some sense? Yeah. Now, what would it take for this claim to be true? Let's assume we know which coffee we're talking about. What would it mean? What would it take for this claim to be true? So I say the coffee is hot. What would it take for this to be true? And don't overthink it. I mean, the answer is pretty straightforward, right? Yeah, you have to have a way to test it. And even if you could test it, then you'd need to, what would have to be? There have to be, the coffee itself would have to be how? How would the coffee have to be? It'd have to be hot. Agreed? The coffee would have to be hot. And this is what we have right now is what we call a proposition. Right? A proposition is a sign that makes a claim and can therefore be true or false depending on how the world is. A proposition has a subject, so here's the coffee, and a predicate is hot. What is said of the grammatical subject. So we say the coffee, that's not a proposition. So let's just make a little box around this for a moment and see whether that makes any sense, right? Earlier I said just coffee, truth or falsehood didn't apply. If I say the coffee, true or false, that still doesn't apply. If I say hot, that doesn't apply. If I say is, true or false, also doesn't make any sense. If I say is hot, true or false, doesn't make any sense. But if I have these minimum conditions that are met, I string together the coffee is hot, I get what's called a proposition. And a proposition is a sign that makes a claim and therefore can be true or false depending on how the world is. So a moment ago when I said, what would it take for it to be true? Well, that depends on how the world is. Like you'd have to have a proper access to the world. And then once you have that proper access, then you can just check, right? And here you go. This is a truth maker. This is the thing that would make the proposition true. It's the coffee we talked about, let's say, right? And it happens to be hot. So there you go. This would be the truth maker. Right? That's the technical term that you find in analytic philosophy for whatever it is that makes a proposition true. And conversely, we say that a proposition is I'll just write it up here because I didn't write it, right? A proposition is what we call a truth bearer, right? It's a bearer of truth, right? It can either be true or false, depending on how the world is. So the proposition is a truth bearer. The thing in the world there is its truth maker. And then it can either fail or succeed in being true. Like if the coffee is in point of fact hot, right, then the proposition is true. And if the coffee is not hot, then the proposition is false. But we can assign to it truth or falsity. Figuring out the truth or falsity is a matter of empirical inquiry, but all the point I'm trying to make right now at this particular stage, and we're taking baby steps into this, is that unlike the standalone concept coffee and the standalone concept hot, right, you need to string together at least two concepts in order to get what's called a proposition, and you have to string together those concepts in the following structure: subject-predicate structure. Right. Also, you can't just do whatever you want. So if I shuffle this, right, and I say hot, the is, I mean, that's not even like talking like Yoda. That's just really, really messed up, right? Hot, the is coffee, right? That fails now to make sense. Or if I say something like, I don't know, if I say, is the coffee hot, right? If I say, is the coffee hot, this calls for a different kind of punctuation. If I say, is the coffee hot, still the same four words that I'm shuffling around, what would I need to end this with? What sort of punctuation should I close this with? A question mark. Agreed. A question mark. Now that's in the interrogative mood. At this point, a question is neither true nor false, right? An answer to the question is true or false. So this is a question. Is the coffee hot, right? That is not a proposition. That's a question. It's not something that's liable of being true or false. So I would say, is the coffee hot, true or false? And just look at what I've underlined. That's neither true or false. An answer to it, so here's an answer, the coffee is hot, right? That is liable of being true or false. So if we say, is the coffee hot? That's a request for two possible answers, right? You can either answer that the coffee is hot, so you can answer in the affirmative, or you can answer in the negative, and you can say something like, right, the coffee is not hot. Fair enough, right? And then who decides which of these two conflicting claims is true? Because someone said the coffee is hot, right? And another person said that the coffee is not hot. What decides ultimately what is the right answer, which is the true one and which is the false one? Because they can't both be true. The coffee, if we're talking about the same coffee, can't both be hot and not hot at the same time in the same respects. That's a crucial thing, right? Well, what decides? It's the world. The world is what's going to decide whether it's going to be this claim over here that ends up being true and the other ends up being false, or whether it's this claim over here that ends up being true or ends up being false, right? So these are both truth bearers. They could potentially be true or false. One of them is going to be true. It's like an on-off switch. If you flip it on, then it's off. And it's not off. You know, and if it's off, then it's not on, right? And then what figures it out is the truth maker, and then we need to sort of access that truth maker. And in some cases, it's really straightforward. If we know which coffee we're talking about, and we're talking about, let's say, my coffee on my desk, and we're in a position to verify, then we can assess its truth or falsity, right? So far, nothing I said should be controversial, but what's fun and what's interesting to see is that there's a minimum structure that needs to be attained in order to start having the properties of truth and falsity. And if we go beneath that minimum structure and we get to something like this, the questions about truth or falsity do not apply. They fail to apply at this stage. There's not enough. It's like putting Velcro on marble, on a marble surface. It just doesn't grip. Right? There's just truth and falsity as ideas just don't grip on there. Let's just pause there. Is that clear, everyone? This is just table setting. I'm setting the table for future things. Tell me if that's clear. If it's clear, say clear. If you got a question, ask a question. None of this should be massively contentious, but it's good to lay it all out and to have a topography because we're going to be making good use of this. Shing, terrific, perfect. And if you got a question again, Reese asks, do all propositions have to have a truth value? Yes, if they're a proposition, they have to have a truth value, right? Because they're making a claim, right? So if you're making a claim, you're taking a stand. It's a proposition. You can think about it this way. I mean, if you analyze what the word proposition is, it's like a proposition. You're taking a position. You're painting the world. You're saying the world is a certain way. And the world can be or fail to be the way that you portray it as being, right? Now, there are some propositions which we may not want to assert, right? So if I say, for instance, right, here's a proposition. Reese, let me just hold whatever you're typing for just for a second, right? I'm gonna write Luke Skywalker is a Jedi, right? There's more to what's going on as far as, you know, philosophy of language when I say a thing like this. So let me just clarify a little bit what's going on. If I say Luke Skywalker is a Jedi, there's a sense in which if I ask whether that's true or false, that at least makes sense. There's enough there for the Velcro to catch on. Right? If I say Luke Skywalker is a Jedi, that's true. Do we agree? It's true. So Luke Skywalker really is a Jedi. But there's also a sense in which we want to say, what's the truth maker for that? And that's going to be a little more problematic than coffee. Because I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's not like Luke Skywalker is out there to be seen in the manner that my coffee is there to be seen. So there's more to what's going on when we make a proposition. Normally a proposition, in addition to having this structure, right? Subject predicate structure. Here's the subject, Luke Skywalker, and then is a Jedi. That's the predicate. So P for predicate, right? S for a grammatical subject, right? Luke Skywalker. That's a thing you pick out, and you say of that thing that it has a repeatable feature, namely that it is a Jedi. So that's the subject predicate structure. When you say this, in addition, what you need to do normally, right, in an ordinary context of a language game of making claims, is you need to assert. Right, you need to assert that Luke Skywalker is a Jedi, but that proposition, even though it is potentially a truth bearer, very few people will assert it. And the assertion is important because in a context, assertion is kind of like, I'm putting my skin in the game. I'm actually going to go and say that's really the way the world is. And there's an open question about what in the world do we look at to verify this. You can say there's the world at large, and you can say there's the subset of the fictional world that we humans make, and it may not be true in the world at large, but it is true in the sense that if we go into the Lucasverse, if you will, it's true there. Those are interesting questions, but it has all the trappings of a proposition. Reese, was that helpful when you said do all propositions have to have a truth value as either true or false? Does that help? Like no one asserts this, right? Yeah, no one asserts this, at least for the world at large. Like normally there's a lot of implicit knowledge there. When we're saying Luke Skywalker is a Jedi, if someone says it's true, they're not actually saying, ooh, I gotta stop my marker. They're not actually saying that they believe in Luke Skywalker. And if you take logic with me, specifically advanced logic, so this is something that Andrew and I believe Sweta can attest to because they just took advanced logic with me. There's ways to finesse that with formal logic to understand how we can assert the truth of Luke as a Jedi without committing ourselves to the existence of Jedis, right? So there's a way of doing that. It has the following structure. I'll just write it out in formal logic, right? You say for all x, right? If x is you say Luke, right? It's a Jedi. Luke is a Jedi, right? There's ways of figuring out. Yeah. All right. So Reese asks, if someone asks Reese, your brother Luke Skywalker is cool, is that false? Then Reese, do you have a brother and is he called Luke Skywalker? No, then it's false. Problem solved. Yeah, there you go. It's not like problematic. That's like, yeah, false. All right. So the truth maker is just not, there's no truth maker out there for that to be true. All right. Good. Let's move on. Yeah. All right. So here's a proposition. So here's where we are. So we have a proposition. It has a subject predicate structure. The coffee is hot. And all of a sudden, because we've strung it together and meets the minimum conditions, we can say of that thing that it is true or false. We can bracket the question of which it is, which happens to be true, which happens to be false, but we can recognize that it has the property of being potentially true or being potentially false, right? That it's met these minimum conditions. Now, there's more to this, right? So a proposition is just this structure, if you will, of concepts that are strung together, but we can take different perspectives on it. So for instance, we can take different attitudes. That's a technical term. I can say, I hope that the coffee is hot. This would be an attitude that I take in towards this proposition. So the proposition is over here, and I can regard that proposition, if you will, through a kaleidoscope of different attitudes. So that's one possible attitude. I hope that the coffee is hot. I fear that the coffee is hot. I recall that the coffee is hot. I imagine that the coffee is hot. I deny that the coffee is hot. So for instance, I'm saying the truth value of this is not, because by default, when we say the coffee is hot, it's a presumption that you're asserting this and you're saying it's true. I deny is trying to say, no, actually, this is going to be false, right? So I deny that the coffee is hot. I can also say I believe that the coffee is hot. That's the reverse of denial. I'm actually taking this to be true, right? To believe just is to take as true. I'm betting my money on the true false possibilities, right? When I say I believe that the coffee is hot, I'm saying, okay, here's a proposition. It can either be true or false. I'm going to actually put my money on true, right? That's what it means to believe. And notice that all of these attitudes are changing. So I deny that the coffee is hot. I imagine that the coffee is hot. And this is not an exhaustive list. I recall that the coffee is hot. I fear that the coffee is hot. I hope that the coffee is hot. That all of these are changing, but look at what's constant. The propositional content throughout is constant, right? So we can do an analysis, if you will, and I'm grabbing this. This is not from Peirce. This is kind of mainstream analytic philosophy orthodoxy that stems from the work of Gottlob Frege and Edmund Husserl, right? If you analyze what it is to entertain a proposition, you realize that there's different attitudes that we can take towards a proposition above and beyond just asserting them and taking them as true. There's different attitudes, right? And that's going to color, if you will, the entire thing. And the entire thing is going to be called a propositional attitude. So when you say all of this, I believe that, and all of this jazz, that is called a propositional attitude. So what you have in front of you right now is what we call the standard propositional attitude analysis, right? So you have an attitude part that's directed towards propositional content. And the propositional content is itself has the structure of subject and predicate. So something is said of something else. So repeatable feature, that's what a predicate is, or property, right? Being hot is not just the property of coffee. Lots of things can be hot. And that repeatable property of being hot is said of, right, the coffee. And there's an indexical term here, so we have to figure out which coffee we're talking about. But on the assumption that we can fix the referent of the coffee, then we can test, we figure whether or not it's true. It's true if the thing is in fact hot. It's false if it's not hot. And to say that I believe that just is to say that we take that as true, but there are different attitudes that one can take towards the same propositional content. So what you have here are, if you will, this is a fancy way of dissecting what it means to think. There are some thoughts that we have that are called propositional attitudes. And for philosophers, these are important, especially for epistemologists, for people concerned with knowledge, right? Because if, for instance, I say, I hope that the coffee is hot, that's extremely different from saying, I believe that the coffee is hot, right? I'm not actually saying that it is hot, I just hope it is, or I fear that it's hot, or I recall that it's hot. And then there's truth conditions for this, and there's truth conditions for this as well. Right? Is it true that I recall that the coffee is hot? Is it true that I'm imagining that the coffee is hot? Right? There's a truth or falsity about that, because that's also a mental fact, if you will. Right? So what you have when you have a propositional attitude is you have a structure that's logically analyzable. This here is not psychological, but this now begins to be something that could enter into the ecology of a subject's psychology, because you believe that, you hope that, you fear that, and these are terms that are psychological terms. These are not terms that are psychological terms. Hotness, coffee, and so on can be defined independently of any subject that's an experiencer, but belief, hope, imaginings, recollections, denials, these are all terms that have to be defined in terms of an experiencer or subject of those thoughts, right? So now you have an even fuller picture, right, of what's going on. So again, this is all table setting, because I'm going to locate Peirce in here. So far, everything I'm showing you is, let's say, the kind of stuff that you ought to know if you're doing a BA in philosophy, because that's mainstream basics of philosophy, if you will, in the analytic tradition. So the propositional attitude analysis, that's like the bread and butter. And so much is then going to be located in sort of figuring out a bunch of sub-issues that arise within that framework. So let me just pause where we are. This is a propositional attitude. That's the proposition, right? And that's the attitude. And by the way, in the example I gave you, the invariant was the propositional content. That stayed the same throughout, and I'm switching around with the attitudes. But it can also be that the attitude is the invariant. So let's keep that fixed. What else can we imagine? I imagine that, ... What else could I be writing? Suggestions? Let's be creative. I imagine that Luke is fighting Vader. I imagine that the cat is red. I imagine that the sky is blue. Yeah, I'm more inventive than you, but that's because I'm more comfortable with this stuff, right? But there you go. Well, whatever. You can imagine whatever. There are no constraints, right? Notice, if I imagine these things, I don't necessarily believe them. I don't necessarily hope them. So the attitudes are different from one another. But here, what I'm doing is I'm showing you how there's a good reason to divide here. See this divider over here? There's a good reason to split our analysis. You can drive a knife here. There's a good reason to wedge, right? This is a mental state. There's a sense in which the entire unit, right, if I were to box it, that's a thing. It's lived as one thing. I imagine that the coffee is hot, right? I imagine that Luke is fighting Vader, right? I imagine that the cat is red. But we have good reason to slice where we do. It's like if you're cutting a chicken, like I love Portuguese chicken and stuff, and when you're done, you have to drive, the Chinese style, they just chop it with a chop, but you carve at the joints, you want to carve it into quarters or whatever. Can everyone see that there's a good reason to carve right here? Can everyone see that joint? There's a joint there, right? There's something that could be constant and the other variant, and the other could be variant and the other constant. Confirm, everyone, that you can see that this is carving at the joints. There's good reason to carve at these places, right? Because right here we have, if in this final analysis, oopsie, let me go back here. We have joints, right? Yeah. So there's good reason to carve here, and there's good reason to carve here, right? Because also the coffee could be different things. What's another thing? So we can also carve. Let me talk about this carving. For the moment, I talked about this carving over here, right? But let me talk about this carving over here. What else could a coffee be? What else could we say of a coffee? Let's have some fun with that. Yeah, the coffee is dark. The coffee is disgusting. Yeah, that's terrific, right? And again, you can see how everything, look at what's constant and look at what's, is bitter, right? Is cold, terrific, right? Look at what's constant and look at what's variable, right? We can toy around with these things and have fun. You can imagine this is kind of like, those little, it looks to me like little wheels on those little locks that you put when you're going to the airport and you want to lock your luggage, and the little thing has wheels with different numbers on it, and you turn them, right? You can imagine this feels a little bit like turning little knobs on a lock, right? You have a little lock over here, right? That's your lock, and then there's these little wheels that you spin, right? They got different numbers on them. Let's say you have four little wheels, right? And so you're switching around. It could be like 1, 2, and then like 8, and then 4. And you can turn these independently of one another. Like if I spin the wheel here to get another other than 2, these can stay the same. Like 1, 8, and 4 will stay the same, but I can decide to switch this, this number to something else. I can switch it to, let's say, it's just something easy for me to write over. Let's say 7, right? I can switch it to 7 and the rest stay the same. Right, and you can imagine that if you do an analysis, you toy around with these things to figure out what you can flip around. Arjun writes, so the predicate can then be subjective. No. What we mean by subject, right? Okay. Wait, hold on. The predicate, don't go there. Let's not go there yet. There's no reason. So one of the things we're going to get to in a moment is that's a step too many, Arjun. So that's baked into what you're wondering is a lot, right? There's no reason why we have to think that hot is a property that's accessible only to individuals, for instance, right? So we're going to get there. Put that on a shelf, Arjun. We'll come back. Put that on the shelf. Yeah, put it on the shelf. Yeah, great question. I understand your question. What's confusing, what's really annoying is that the word subject, grammatical subject, it shows up. And I wish the terminology were a little clearer, but we are inheriting a vocabulary. So I got to make do with what we got. This is the grammatical subject, because presumably this is a subject, right? So here's the confusion. I believe that. So that's the subject, I. There's the grammatical subject when I say the coffee is hot in a proposition, plus people might worry that hot is a subjective property. So it's like, that's messed up. And so we unfortunately have inherited a lot of vocabulary that's confused. If you're ever curious, you can look up a paper of mine on where that terminology came up, called How Descartes Changed the Subject, because there's a breach there between the terminology that was used in medieval philosophy and modern philosophy. What they understood by subject was radically different, and we've inherited kind of a very confused terminology. Yeah. Okay, good. Let me just pause now because I want to hear from everyone. Is this clear? If it's clear, type in clear. And if you got a question, ask a question. We're slicing and dicing. See that this is where we can slice between these things. And what justifies us in slicing is the idea that one can stay the same while the others change, right? And even though, even though this is lived as one thing, so I believe that the coffee is hot is lived as one thing, right? We can make distinctions here between all those parts. All right, terrific. Now let's just focus on the attitude of believing for a second, right? To believe is to take as true. So you might define that, right? To believe is to take as true. And in Peirce's hands, to believe is to stand ready to act in a certain way, right? And now let's talk about Peirce now, because so far what we have is kind of like just mainstream analytic philosophy. Now we're going to add some ideas that are distinctive of Peirce. They're not new ideas, but I can graft them at their proper spot. We talked about belief, right? When I say I believe that the coffee is hot, we can put this in the background here because now we know which parts these are. If I'm looking at the attitude part and I say I believe that the coffee is hot, or whatever other proposition you might be entertaining and believing in, right? There are 4 ways of fixing belief. So ultimately, if I want to establish this belief and maintain it, because we don't want beliefs to change. Remember, when beliefs encounter real doubt, when they get interrupted, it sucks. Remember, we talked about how we want belief to go on, right? And Peirce says this explicitly. Every belief comes with a hope and an anticipation that it will continue. We don't want to change our beliefs. And so how do we get the beliefs to continue? It sucks when they're interrupted, right? How do we get them to continue? And according to Peirce, as we saw, there are 4 ways of fixing belief. One of them is the method of tenacity. Just like keep believing whatever you want, irrespective of whatever. Just stick your head in the sand. And yeah, that'll make the belief go on. But Peirce said not go on for a very long time. Right? You will be able to perpetuate that belief. So your desire to have the belief continue, right, is going to be satisfied to a certain extent, but sooner or later, that's not going to work out. So it'll suck. You will eventually reach the unhappy emoticon of the rupture of your habits, right? You can't just keep going on in blissful ignorance. Like, for instance, suppose I say, like I have, this is a really sad story. I have a grandmother on my partner's side in China who, she had a gallstone. She didn't know, and she had pain in her abdomen, and she never got it checked, and it didn't end up killing her. She could have just easily gone to get the gallstone removed, but she's like, I don't want to deal with it. It was like the method of tenacity, and she was one tenacious woman, like really, really, stubborn and hard-headed, which can be a virtue in many circumstances, but she just applied the method of tenacity. It's just stomach pain. It's just stomach pain. It's just like I've got, like, say, just a stomach ache. But no, actually, she had a gallstone. And by the time, it was too late, So she applied the method of tenacity, and it didn't work out for her. It's unfortunate. And we do that sometimes, and we can. That's a possibility. I've just described you one instance, and you only need one instance to prove that something is possible. You can use the method of tenacity to fix belief. But Peirce's point was, and it's illustrated in the case I've just shared with you, not going to work in the long run. Eventually, this will catch up with you, right? Another method is the method of authority. Right? If you want to maintain a lie, you can just force it institutionally, right? If you want to, annoying information that might force you to think otherwise, well, you can get together with other Homo sapiens and make sure that you circle the wagons and keep all the disbelievers out, right? That's one way of doing it. It's like, you keep everyone out. That's fine. Everyone who disagrees. That's one way of doing it. And that, again, will work up to a point. Work longer than the method of tenacity, but we'll catch up with you eventually, right? So that's one method. There's the a priori method. Why don't you try to pick believe in a proposition that's going to be ultimately never shown wrong, right? So plug in the propositional part here. So I believe that the coffee is hot. Well, the coffee being hot is not an a priori belief. So it's a bad candidate for the a priori method, right? But you could say something like, I believe that, and then you plug in, whatever you want, right? Arjun, just pause for a second. He says, it seems to me that tenacity is more a mode of rejecting other ideas than cementing your own. Is that correct? Well, it is at the same time, by rejecting the other ideas, cement your own. So that's exactly the point. You cement your own by rejecting the others. Do you see that, Arjun? That's the idea. Yeah. And this is not an a priori belief, but you can plug in something, like I believe that God necessarily exists or something like that. And you think that that's a priori, that anyone who would contemplate that's not liable of ever being shown false, and that's guaranteed to keep going on because you want to just go on, right? That's what it means to believe. You just want that belief to keep going on. But again, Peirce points out, it's like, well, is it obvious? It's not obvious at all, right? If you're familiar with debates in the philosophy of religion, for instance, right? If you know what's called Anselm's ontological argument for the existence of God, it says, well, God is that being which is greater than anything, and if it didn't exist, then it would fail to meet that definition, therefore it exists. Well, there's a reply to that called Galeno's island. It's like, well, you can use the same argument to prove that the perfect island exists. There's a perfect island, and it exists. Why? Because it's perfect, and if it didn't exist, then it would be less than perfect, therefore the perfect island exists. It's like, we can have serious disagreements about what's obvious, what's a priori manifest, and it's not a good method in the long run. Again, it'll run into troubles. And Peirce says, well, ultimately the best method is science, right? And he says, if you want the beliefs to last, right, what you do is you expose yourself to the world in a way that's methodical so that you can weed out the wrong beliefs and identify the true beliefs. And in the long run, by collaborating with others, we'll kind of wedge our way slowly. We'll kind of wiggle our way towards something that's going to be a more accurate picture of the world. And because it's going to be a more accurate picture, at least as an approximation, then it's not liable of being shown false, right? Because you can eventually get it, at least if not right, as close to right as you can then get it. And the idea is you can eventually converge. So if you have a truth maker like this, right? So here's the truth. It's out there in the world waiting to be known. And if we are a bunch of inquirers, we can converge on the truth. So let's go back to Arjun that spoken about the hotness. Look, Arjun, you get to experience hot, but guess what? So do I, and so does everyone in this class, right? And so it's not the soul. I mean, we're not on Cartesian ground here. This is a different philosophy. It's not a Cartesian philosophy. I exist as much as you do. Sorry to break it to you. You're not alone in the privacy of your own little mind, and so do other people. And so you get to experience hotness, and so do I, and so would anyone. So if the coffee is hot, what we mean by the coffee is hot is true, just is that anyone who would, sip it, touch it, or whatever, stick a thermometer in it, would confirm that it's hot. Yeah. Arjun, do you see that? We can converge on the hotness. The hotness is out there waiting for us to experience, and we can converge on it, right? And that's the scientific way of figuring that out. And that's a very different way from saying, like, it's only I get to experience hotness. Like, how arrogant. It's like, no, you don't. It's like, you ever been across, like, imagine, oh man, this is horrible. I'll make a joke here. Let's see what people type. Subjective. Well, whether or not you think it's a good coffee, that's probably a different story. But even beautiful, good, these kinds of things we can agree on. So let's say, for instance, take Google reviews, right? There's a truth of the matter about which is the best barbecue in BC. People will disagree, but just like when we were doing this, right? If you know something about barbecue, right, and people write reviews on Google, right, about the restaurant and whether or not which is the best barbecue, there'll always be people say, I think this barbecue is the best. But look, on the whole, if you're not biased, like if you're accepting bribes, or if it's written by a Russian bot, the Google reviews don't mean much. So we agree the Google reviews will not track much. But people who are saying the barbecue is a good barbecue when they're, say, evaluating a restaurant, it's not like they're saying, I had a dream. They're directing their judgment towards something external to them, namely the barbecue at hand. And presumably there are some experiences that are shared across us such that in the long run, right, it would prevail. So the barbecue is in the crosshair. Arjun and everybody else, do you see that? There's no reason why on this epistemology you have to rule out, things like aesthetic, stuff and just write them off as preferences. It's just your personal preference. I mean, that needs an argument. I mean, you shouldn't just, think that that's obvious, right? There's some truth of the matter, right? People are, I mean, it's a tricky truth, I agree, right? That let's say there's different truths, right? So here's the truth of the hotness, so that's being hot. There's a truth about the length, for instance. If I make a line on the screen right now on my desktop, there's a truth about how long that line is. So let's say it's looks to me like 3 centimeters. There's a truth about that. And there's a truth about the brisket over here. We agree that all of these truths admit of, different methods of inquiry up to a point. But the bottom line is, when we say something is true, we're not just reporting on a personal preference. If we say something is true, we're inviting people to inquire, and we're betting that were they to inquire long enough and in an honest way, they would converge on that opinion, right? That's it. To all questions that are claimed as being true. So Reese writes, to all questions, that are claimed as being true. If that's the move you make, then that's what you're saying, right? That you're betting on the truth of it. Now, you could be wrong. So here's the thing. You could be over here. You could be wrong. I'm betting on the truth of something, and you could be wrong. You might be wrong about the length, that's the easiest way of testing one, because you use an instrument. I think people would agree on that one easier. Hotness is, but you could be wrong too, right? Like, let's say right before you taste the coffee, you put some ice cubes in your mouth or whatever, and your perceptual organs are screwed up as a result of that, or you smoked a lot of cannabis or whatever. You're a piss poor inquirer. It's like me looking up at the stars, but right before I grease up my glasses with the barbecue sauce or the grease from my brisket. And then I look up at the stars and I'm like, I don't understand. I can't make a good measurement. It's like, no shit. And I smoked cannabis, but somehow the hotness tastes different to me. It's like, yeah, I understand, of course, so you have to equip yourself. Inquiry is not a free pass on, you can do whatever you want to, like people writing reviews. Like, did you even go to the barbecue place? Like, people write reviews on Google, and look, you can't be a Russian bot. You have to have, gone to the bloody place. You have to know something about barbecue. Is this your first barbecue joint? Do you even have a point of comparison? I mean, how much barbecue have you eaten? And then it's like, anyone can log on and say, and that is not science. All right. So let me just clarify this example. Google reviews of restaurants are not science, because people are not using the proper method, right? It's like, seriously, you can just log on and invent yourself as a food specialist just on virtue of typing, the brisket was awful. But what the hell do you know, right? Like, there are the equivalent of PhDs in brisket baking. I'm sorry to tell you, but ask Texans, man. Barbecue's their religion. It's serious shit, right? So, all right, so you got to approach it with the right method. But, and remember, this is a conditional upon everyone using the scientific method, right? How do we figure out the truth of something, right? Well, the best method of fixing the belief, that is, the taking as true that the coffee is hot, is to do it as a community equipped with a method. So community with a method, not just community. Let's pause here. Can we all see that? Can we all see that this fits there? Tell me if that's clear. Because I'm setting the table and I'm plugging in what we did last week in this general analysis of propositional attitude. Yeah, like, who's entitled to talk about BC barbecue without going to Texas? Seriously, that's like saying I have opinions about astronomy, but I have no degree in it. It's like, like, what's that worth, right? It's like I'm not a fan. I've looked at the string theory in physics, but I disagree with it. It's like, all right, what are your credentials? Like, none. I watched Cosmos on YouTube. That's it. It's like, all right, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I watched Neil deGrasse Tyson on the Joe Rogan show. Therefore, I don't like string theory, or I like string theory. How much weight do we attach to that opinion? Like, who the hell cares? You don't know what you're talking about. So you have to have the right method. So community is not enough, right? This is not just a story about intersubjectivity. It's that and more. Right? It's a story about the world being external to us, and the privilege that you have to experience hot on a Cartesian picture is unique to you and can be doubted. For a Peircean, no, it's not unique to you. Like, I can also experience hotness, and it'll average out. It'll average out, right? All right. So, and remember, if everyone took a measurement of this, like, let's say I were to draw this on a piece of paper, right? A real piece of paper that's not going to move, because these computer screens are different from all of us. And we try to measure the distance with a ruler. Do we agree we'd all come out, like, depending on how precise your ruler is, and you use, let's say, a magnifying glass, if we round it out, we'd say it's 3.074. Do we agree that we all probably come out, if you keep the decimals going farther enough, we'd probably come all with a different number? Do we agree on that? Like, it's very unlikely that we would all have like the damn bloody same exact number down to a T. Like, we would disagree. But none of us jump from that conclusion. None of us jump from the fact that we'd all come up with different numbers. Let's say, you know, Owen came up with, like, you know, 1, 2. None of us say, well, measurements are subjective. Measurements of length, you know, you say 3 centimeters, I say 2 centimeters. Who the hell can tell, right? We don't do that leap. And there's a bunch of historical reasons why we do that leap for things like heat, but we don't do it for that. And you'd have to go in John Locke and talk about primary and secondary qualities. I've written a book on this stuff. You can actually read up on that if you want, but I won't do that detour. It's really interesting to diagnose why we're tempted to go from we reach different verdicts, right, but it's still out there waiting to be known, versus we reach different verdicts, but all of us are right, right? Let's say he says it's cold, right, because he took some hashish, and we say it's hot. You know, and we say, or just because he's weird, forget the hashish. Right? Inquire over here. It's just weird. It's a weirdo, right? And then we say it's hot, and we're all like, well, he or she's as entitled to their opinion. They think it's cold. Like, what? No, right? The thing's hot, right? And it's interesting to see why we have this double standard, that for certain things we're like, yeah, of course there's a truth out there to be known. And then for others, it's like, it's all subjective. Who the hell can tell? Like, all of that in Peirce, it's like, that goes out the window. That's all a Cartesian heritage. All right, so the best way of believing, fixing belief, because we want the belief to perpetuate itself. We want it to last, right? What we mean by fixing belief is making it last, because when it gets interrupted, it sucks. We don't want that to happen, right? The best way to make it last in the long run, right, to win not just this game, but the game of all games, or the sum of all the games, is science, right? And that's how you do it. And it plugs into this analysis of what it means to have a thought. It means that I believe that a proposition, and a proposition is a grammatical subject and a predicate, and we've seen different alternatives, all right? Now, these are concepts. Coffee, that's a concept. Hot, that's a concept. And you've acquired those concepts. That's why when I started this whole class and I just gave you coffee in pure isolation, that made some sense. Enough sense for some people to mistakenly and you know, foolishly just write true, even though, you know, they probably, you know, they did unthinkingly, they thought, I recognize this concept, that's why you wrote true. I mean, most people who wrote true, that's probably what you had in mind. Am I right? Something like that. Like, I recognize coffee. Coffee is a concept I own. I've got this concept already and I wrote true. Am I reconstructing that properly? Like, I mean, I could, if Prof did that on me, I'd also be confused, right? And I might have written true as well. So for what it's worth, that's cool, right? So when we say coffee, it's a concept we recognize. And I suppose in a pinch, if I don't know where this is going and I feel a little confused and someone asks me a bizarre question, someone says, coffee, true or false? I go true, because it's a concept I own. It's a concept I've acquired. Same thing for hot. So far, so good. These are concepts and you have them. Agree to that, because I want to take baby steps. These are concepts and you have them. Agree if you agree. Type in agree. No. Good, because I mean, I really want everything to sort of, we take steps that we're secure with, without being too anal and Cartesian about it, but like just pedagogically, just to make sure that we take things step by step. So we've seen that having concepts is a necessary but not sufficient condition for having a propositional attitude. Because to have a propositional attitude, you need way more than just concepts, right? You need to have the concepts strung together, right? And you need to believe or adopt an attitude towards them. There's different attitudes than belief, but you need to adopt an attitude towards it, and then you have a propositional attitude, right? But figuring out whether it's true with the method of science is dependent on what we mean by coffee. So what do we mean by coffee? And what do we mean by hot? Right? Now, these are straightforward concepts that we take for granted. So we don't really worry about what we mean by coffee. But let me give you an example of why it's important to get clear on what we mean by our concepts, right? The method of science aims at truth, but since truth is a property of propositions, we saw that a moment ago, right? So the method of science aims at truth. It's that picture over here. We're trying to get to a lasting truth. We're trying to get the lasting beliefs by getting to the truth, right? And since truth is a property of propositions, it's only when you have that minimum condition of grammatical subject and predicate that you have the properties of truth and falsity that come into the picture. And since propositions string together concepts, truth can only be hoped for if we get clear about the concepts we employ. Right? If you don't even know what your concepts mean, then this goal that you have is not going to be met, right? For the following reasons. These are my words, so let me read them again carefully. The method of science aims at truth, but since truth is a property of propositions, and since propositions string together concepts, truth can only be hoped for if we get clear about the concepts we employ. Now, for hot and for coffee, we didn't have a problem. But what about this? Amrit and Jesse got married last March. True or false? All right, so Amrit's some person, right? Jesse's some person, and is a word we recognize. Last March, so given that when this is enunciated, we mean like last March, so we know when to fix that. So that's March 2021. True or false? Amrit and Jesse got married last March. True or false? So, again, this is weird now. So remember when I started with coffee, that was weird? Can we agree this is weird? If you think this is weird, say weird. Something's weird. Even if we haven't clarified what the weirdness is, just tell me this is weird. Prof's being weird on us again. Like it was a nice patch, you were making sense, but you got weird on us again. Good. I'm hoping, because I'm trying to be weird, right? All right, so where's the weirdness this time? It's a different kind of weirdness than when I asked you coffee, true or false, right? Here, do we agree that if you look at the grammar, we have all the trappings of a proposition? Like if I say Amrit and Jesse got married last March, that's a proposition. Can we agree on that? It's a proposition. Like it smells like a proposition. That's like, so far it's got all the trappings of a proposition. Unlike the just standalone concept coffee, right? Yeah. Like, where's the problem here? If we had to pinpoint, right? There's some problem with not knowing who Amrit is, but that can be fixed. There's a problem with not knowing who Jesse is, and that can be fixed. And there's a problem about locating which March we're talking about, but that can be fixed once we know what date we are and so on. Where's the problem in this? Yeah, got married, right? That's problematic, right? So if you knew what getting married means, we could figure out whether it's true or false. Are we agreeing on that? Like if somehow you knew, if you got clarity on what the heck this meant, then you could begin an investigation to figure out which of these two categories it falls under, whether it falls into the category of the true or the false. Can we agree on that? If you somehow had gotten rid of this question mark, because you're like, WTF, I don't know what that is, right? If you got rid of that, we can begin to at least investigate. Agreed? You can somehow figure this out, because this is like you can overcome these difficulties. I know that now. But like these, you can overcome these difficulties, right? So Amrit, we can figure out what we're talking about, just like we talked about the coffee. We can figure that out in principle. Like I could clarify that for you. I can give their student number, right? I can insert their student number and last name. Now, if you're cool with that, we can fix those problems. Yeah. All right. So suppose we've ascertained which month we're talking about. We've ascertained who we're talking about, and we've ascertained what the heck this even means. Do we agree that we can inquire into the truth or falsity of this proposition? That's what I want you to agree on. Like if we could figure all those things out, then we can get started and become investigators and figure out whether in fact it's true or false. You can go check in the world. Like there's presumably records, or I don't know, who the hell knows, right? Whatever fairy it is, right? I'm only getting Reese to agree to that. I want to see if everyone follows that, because I think that's pretty right, that this is the locus of the problem, but if that were fixed, everything else is kind of neat. Cool. All right. Let me just go back now. What's stumping us in our desire to inquire into whether or not it's true or false, like you can think about, let's go back here for a second. We want to get together right? To figure out the truth of something. So this is us, this is you, this is me, right? This is Owen, this is Nav, right? We want all to get together and figure out whether or not something is true. In this case, whether or not Jesse and Amrit got ferried last March, right? That's the target. That's the goal we're going for, right? But now let me reread what I had said earlier. The method of science aims at truth. That's what we're trying to figure out here in the bullseye. But since the truth is a property of proposition, and since propositions string together concepts, truth can only be hoped for if we get clear about the concepts we employ. Now, for coffee and for hot, that wasn't problematic, but I've generated an example here where we have a concept that's unclear. Getting ferried. You don't know what that means. And so inquiry cannot begin, right? We can't. I'm trying to motivate why we need to get our ideas clear. Peirce is the text from which we're grabbing the ideas today. It's called How to Make Our Ideas Clear, right? Why should we bother to do that, right? And that's why, right? Because if your concepts aren't clear, inquiry is stumped. That's like if, I don't know, anyone know about cars a lot? Like if I had to, is there a part of a car that I can grab and put it in the palm of my hand and the whole car won't work? Someone who knows anything about car mechanics, like what part of the car, so tell me which part that I can grab and just like it'll fit in my hand and the whole car is just won't get a spark plug. Arjun says spark plug. That's cool. All right. So imagine if I steal your spark plug, we're done. We agreed the car is not going to start. Even if you have the world's coolest car, right? You're done. And Owen's right. Determining whether this is true or false is idle conversation. Agreed. So let's say we have a conversation about what Amrit and Jesse, whether they got ferried last month. If we haven't even gotten clear on this, right, we'd be doing something called ordinary philosophy. I'm sorry to say, but philosophy is often like this, right? People talk about things they don't even know what they're talking about, right? And so Peirce wants to say, look, better get clear on what the heck you even mean. Otherwise, it'll be an idle conversation. So, Owen, you're entirely right. Ariana writes battery. Good. Although battery probably wouldn't fit in my hand. So Peirce talks about how to get our ideas clear, right? Yeah, Owen cynically says, up to this point, my learnings in philosophy have only been about this because no one ever defines what the heck they mean. And now we're about to find out 3 grades of clearness, right? So here's one grade of clearness, a mental image, right? You can have a mental image. If you think about hot, do you have a mental image? Like if I say hot, something comes up somehow? You know, like a feeling or like you recollect a feeling, you have a mental image. Yeah, I have one. Do you? Like, let's just check, right? Something comes up, right? It's a strange thing, could be different from, that can be different, but a mental image comes up, right? Same thing for coffee, right? All right, here's a second grade of clearness, a definition, right? So for instance, if you think of coffee, right? You have a mental image. You can define what you mean by coffee. That's a bit better as far as Peirce is concerned. So if we want to get together, if the goal is to do a inquiry, like a community of inquirers trying to get to the truth, right? We're trying to get to the truth. You need to coordinate on what the heck we're looking for. It's like we're going out into the woods and we're saying, let's go look for that animal, and we don't even know which animal we're looking for. We're not going to nab the animal we're looking for if we don't even sort of define what the heck we're looking for, right? Now, there's 3 grades of clearness. You can have a vague mental image of what it is, right, that you're conceiving of when you're entertaining a concept. A slightly better thing, the second grade of clearness, would be to have a definition. You can try to define it. If we spread around a definition amongst the different participants in this hunt, right, that's a bit better. They know what to find out. Like, just imagine I'm running a summer camp with a bunch of kids, and I say to the kids, go look for a truffle. Like, how many kids do you think know what a truffle even is and have a mental image of a truffle? Who even this class knows? If I were to do summer camp with you, I said, let's go look for a truffle. Who has a mental image of truffle? Say yes if you have one, no if you don't. What, like if there's a picture in your mind, some sort of mental image. Well, you're pretty old. You ask if some people know truffle, right? That's not bad. We might find a truffle. So Cameron, Owen, Andrew, and I, we might converge on a truffle. Reese doesn't have anything, nothing comes up. It's a blank, right? Then I can define the truffle. That's a bit better if we're going to try to find one. Singh has no idea what a truffle is. It's a mushroom, by the way. And I have to say, my picture of a truffle is a very bad one. I don't even know. I've eaten truffle, but like truffle is not a chocolate. I'm talking about the mushroom here. Yeah. So yeah, it's a truffle. There you go. Right. So you have some vague. You know, everyone's interesting to see, right? We have a vague, and that's why it's the first grade of clearness. It's the least one good one. It's like we all have a vague, some of us have a vague, you know, more or less, you know, I think this when I think about that, right? Then a better thing is the second grade, which is better, right? That's better, is a definition. So, okay, so here's what a truffle is. A truffle is, and then you give a definition. I'm telling you, I'm barely at the first grade. I'm not at the second grade. I can't define truffle. I don't think anyone in this class can, unless you would surprise me by being a mushroom, enthusiast, or you look it up online. Don't look it up because that's cheating, right? And the third grade of clearness, according to Peirce, right? And this is the one that I put a little hand here. This is the one that he's going to think is the one that's good. And that's the best one, is a specification of the practical and actions, right? Arjun, stop Googling stuff. You're looking for stuff trying to impress us. No one's impressed that you can Google stuff. I have no way of telling where you pull that out from. Yes, you can Google stuff. We all can, bro. All right. A specification of the practical and actions and effects entailed by your concepts. Yeah, of course I caught you. Well, actually, you should have said I'm not caught. Only you'd know if you're caught. And so here are the three grades of clearness, and we'll see this in the reading. Here's an example of the first grade of clearness. You say gold. Well, what do you mean by gold? Well, I mean this, and the mental image pops up in your brain, right? That's good, but it has a drawback, right? Mental images are subjective and can thus give a false sense of rectitude. And this is a case where we really want to use the word subjective, because it is different from everyone. Like when you think of gold, you might think of, let's say in its raw form or whatever, that really is unique to you, right? So when you're thinking about, if I tell you lasagna, what do you picture in your lasagna? Like mine's got spinach, does yours, right? That really is subjective. And it also gives you a false sense of rectitude. You can't tell by introspection alone whether or not gold is a real or a fake. So hey man, that looks like gold, right? It's shiny and it's weighing a certain, like, there you go. And you can't tell with this first grade of clearness, whether what's a real, what's a fake, but it yet gives you a false sense of rectitude. You're convinced you're right. You're convinced you got this. Oh, I got this. I know what I'm talking about. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Right. And of course, if you made a living from gold, that would be a difference that makes a difference. If you were a gold seller, right, or if you're buying gold for your partner for some sort of marriage proposal, whatever, it might make a difference. But even then, I don't know that you could figure it out, right? But if it really made a difference on your livelihood or how much you're going to pay for something, but if it's a difference that makes no difference, it'll fall underneath the radar, if you will. But it gives us a false sense that we're right, because of course we all are convinced we're right. The second grade of clearness, here's an example. Well, that's a little bit better, because remember I said the first grade of clearness is not bad. It's a place to start. Second grade of clearness is better. Gold means a yellow precious metal, the chemical element of atomic number is 79, used especially in jewelry and decoration and to guarantee the value of currency. So that's a definition. And according to Peirce, that's the second grade of clearness, because that's better. It's like you're on the right track. It's certainly better than just having an image in your mind. Right? That could be something that's not bad, but it also has a problem. What's the problem with the second grade of clearness? Well, the definitions only recombine other concepts, so we can define things that don't correspond to anything real. I mean, if you think about this, these are all other concepts that we've strung together. So we're trying to define this concept. That's the concept we're trying to define. So what we do is then we take a bunch of other concepts and we string them together. Well, that's good so far as it goes, but it presupposes that you know all of those concepts and they're strung in the right way. Right? And that could be problematic because you can recombine them in all sorts of ways and they might not correspond to anything real. So here's an example. Gold is a yellow precious metal, the chemical element of atomic number 78, used especially in jewelry and decoration and to guarantee the value of currencies. What's wrong with this one? What's wrong with this definition? Something's wrong with this definition. You got it. Right? I said 78. It's 79. And look how easily we can be fooled into thinking this is a correct definition. This is lying. This is wrong. Right? This is an inaccurate definition. It's a false definition. It's inaccurate. And yet it seems perfectly reasonable on the surface. Right? And there's no way to tell. If I gave you a chemical textbook, right, and I made it a consistent swap, like I switched around all the numbers, but consistently such that, because of course, if I switch to 78, then I'm bumping whatever was 78, right? And so I'd have to make adjustments throughout, but I could give you a fake chemical textbook with a bunch of definitions, but if they're consistent enough, they could be completely bogus. Wouldn't that suck? And you'd have no way to tell, right? You'd have no way to tell. Here's another example. Why it's important, to not just define things. Well, imagine I say, you want to get ferried? Come on, guys. Will you ferry me? Yes or no? Right? Well, you're probably going to say, well, what the heck do you mean by ferry? Here's this ferriage stuff again. Okay, slow down. I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Folks, it's coming. You're finally, the clarity is about to come. I'm going to give you the second grade of clearness, because right now, let's just pause. First grade of clearness. Anybody have something pop up in their mind when I say this? You want to get ferried? Ferried? Anything? No, I don't mean married. I mean ferried. It's not a typo. Any mental image pumps up in your head? Yeah. Ariana's generously thinking I made a typo to kind of make it all work, but no. Any mental image of people? So no first grade of clearness there, right? It's confused. It's no image at all. Agreed, right? It's not even like gold or coffee, right? It's nothing there. So let me define it. Let's ascend to the second ring here. Let's go to the second grade of clearness, right? Let's wait to see. Oh, and now be done typing, and then I'm going to go to the second grade of clearness. I'm going to define ferriage for you. I'm the ferry. Black thought. Yeah, it's nothing there, right? It's very strange. Just a blank. Good. All right, let's stop typing. All right, let's define it. To ferry, the verb, the act that ferried people do. Ferriage, the noun, what happens when two people ferry. Ferried, the adjective, having decided to ferry another person. Y'all good? Will you ferry me? Why not? Ritu says, I still don't know what it means. Still don't know what it means. But I gave you a definition. I gave you 3 definitions. Look at this, right? And that's the problem with the second grade of clearness. It can be false, right? It might not correspond to anything real. So we saw that. This doesn't correspond to anything real. And also, they can be recombined. They're just recombining concepts, right? And none of that is helpful, right? And so, for instance, I could have a situation like this. This is like a textbook, like I told you, like you can be consistent. And the textbook kind of weaves together all these definitions. And yet, you're not helped at all by definitions. They don't always help you. Right. So you want to ask yourself, what does that even mean? Like, what does this ferry? What does that even mean? And that's not a question you ask for coffee, right? Because you have a first grade of clearness. So most of you, I don't think you can even define coffee. Let's have some kicks. Second grade of clearness. Can anyone achieve the second grade of clearness with coffee, the concept coffee, without looking at the internet or a book? Can you define coffee? Just 60 seconds on this. I'm just curious. A hot drink made from beans, I can go to like bubble tea places and satisfy that definition, and it ain't going to be a coffee now. Caffeinated drink made from coffee beans. Being a caffeinated drink, well, a Monster Energy drink would satisfy that, but it's not a coffee. Our definitions aren't that good, right? Our definitions aren't that great. And it's hard, right? So the second grade of clearness, do we agree? We're giving it a first go, right? I'm giving you only 60 seconds on this, right? But the first grade of clearness is much easier than the second grade of clearness. And we can't even reach the second grade of clearness. But if we did, we'd have a better handle on the concept, because when you picture a coffee, when I picture a coffee, there's no reason why those mental pictures have to be the same, right? And so we want to figure out what the stuff even means. And there's 3 grades of clearness, all right? Let's go for the third grade of clearness now. Let's give an example. So the third grade of clearness is to specify the actions and effects entailed by your concept, right? So here's an example. Being ferried means that if you meet me in the street, then we shall bump knuckles and say, that's right, baby. That's what being ferried means. Now it's clear. Do we see what it means now? Are you satisfied? Like if I ask you, do you want to get ferried with me? You want to, right? I've defined what that means for you. I'm saying if you meet me in the street, then, and here are the actions. So if you meet these conditions, here are the actions that you're gonna have to take. So we shall bump knuckles and say, "That's right, baby." So people who are ferried, so Amrit and Jesse, they walk in the street. What did they do? So Amrit and Jesse got ferried last March. So Amrit and ferried got to cross each other on the street. What did they do? Amrit and Jesse cross each other on the street. What did they do? bumped knuckles and said, "That's right, baby." Right? It's a pact that every time we see each other, we'll just bump knuckles and say, "That's right, baby." Actually, we can have a ferriage ceremony right now. Will you ferry me? I'm gonna say I do. I want to ferry you. I do. Now that we know what ferriage is, will you ferry me? I want to see if I want to ferry other people. If you ferry me, then henceforth, when we cross each other on the street, we'll have to bump knuckles, and people around us will think we're crazy, but we'll understand what we mean. So Andrew's ferrying me. We're ferriage. Let's ferry. Reese, let's ferry. Right? What about gold? Nav, thank you. So Nav says, now what would be the example of gold? Specify the actions and effects. Well, here we go, Nav. Gold means that if you add stainless chloride to an acid solution containing the metal, then you should see a color ranging from light pink to dark purple. Nav, you like that? No. It's a specification of how you get to pick out gold in the world, right? By telling you what actions you should take and what effects you should observe, right? So if you add stainless chloride, of course, this at the third grade of clearness, we're at the level of experts. We're at the level of people who, want that level of clarity, because the path of least resistance is to stick to your mental image of the first grade of clearness. You only ascend the grades of clearness according to need, right? But if you really, really want to be clear on something, that's how you get people to converge on gold. So let's go back to let's go back to what I was doing here for a moment. How do you think people who make a living from gold figure out gold? So let's go back here. You make a living from selling gold and buying gold. How are you going to distinguish a real from a fake? First grade of clearness, second grade of clearness, or third grade of clearness? Biden ain't going to be good enough. You fake that too. So you'll make a living from, it'll make a difference at your bottom line paycheck if you distinguish which one is a fake and which one isn't. Which grade of clearness do you want to employ? First, second, or third grade of clearness? This looks like a little smiley face now. My face detecting module is on. First grade of clearness is I have a mental image. Is that good enough for you? Yes or no? I make a living from gold. I want to figure out fakes from the real thing. Good enough for you? Yes or no? I want to hear from everyone. No, obviously not. Second grade of clearness, a definition. Does a definition help you figure out what's real and what's fake? Second grade of clearness. A definition. No. It's on the way to something, but it's not good enough. What about the third grade of clearness? And let's go back to the third grade of clearness. Would that help you figure out the truth, the golds from the fakes? Let's go back to the third grade of clearness for gold. If you add stainless chloride to an acid solution containing the metal, then you should see a color ranging from light pink to dark purple. Will that help you tell the fake from the real thing? It is unique to gold. That is exactly right. Yeah. That's how you tell. That's how real. That's people in who work in this stuff. Now notice it's a prescription for an experiment that you can run in the world. It's telling you what you have to do. What are the actions, right? Like being ferried. Instead of a circular definition, here's what we do. If we meet, we bump knuckles and say something, right? It's a specification to do. If you do these things, then you should see these things. That's it. If then. If you do in these conditions, then these things are going to happen, right? That's the third grade of clearness. And Peirce's point is that if you're going to, action is key here and the effects are key here. Yeah, it tells you what to do. It's not just purely contemplative. There's something you have to go out in the world and do. It's like an experiment, Owen. You're going to go out there in the world, you're going to do something, right? And under certain conditions, right, there's going to be things that are going to, you expect to see, right? And if those things are actually the way you expect them to see them, then you know you're on the right track. If not, not, right? That's what it is. That's what it is. That's the third grade of clearness. Right? So we're going to go to our Peirce packet, but so far what we have are these third grades of clearness, and they fit in the propositional analytic analysis of the confusion. A little confusing, but it's a different notion. So we're going to get to it a little more, but as a first approximation, let's just pause and see. Owen finds it a little confusing. Where are folks? I think it's pretty clear. Just to clarify, Nav says, this action is unique to gold, like no other metal will give the same result. That's exactly right, Nav. That's exactly right. In the same way that 79 has to be, when you say the atomic number 79 has to be just to gold, otherwise what the heck's the point, right? We say it's yellow. Gold is yellow. Is that a good definition? Because there are good and bad definitions for each of these grades of clearness. Now, if I say gold is yellow, right now on my counter I have bananas. Do bananas fall under the scope of gold? I just say gold is yellow. That's my definition. Gold is yellow. Of course it does. If all I say gold is yellow, right? So I need to specify more. Yeah, the bananas on that definition, gold is yellow, right? It falls underneath that definition. It has actually captured by that definition. So a good definition is one that picks out uniquely the thing it wants to pick out. Same thing for a third grade of clearness. It picks out uniquely what you want to pick out. Yeah, that's the whole point. We want to get clear on what our concepts are, right? So what we want is we want to be able to say, what the heck do our concepts even mean? Because we want to be able to look for the truth, and we can't find the truth. Here, we knew what this meant. So when we say, I believe that the coffee is hot, if we fix what we talk about with the, we knew what to do, right? But what happens in the case where we want to say something like, I believe that, and it involves concepts, the proposition will involve concepts that are a little more tricky, then we need to get clear, and there's 3 grades of clearness, right? First grade of clearness, a mental image. Second grade of clearness, a definition. Third grade of clearness, even better, a specification of the practical actions and effects that you would expect to see. And we'll see different formulations of that in our reading, which is what we're about to do. All right. The reading will bring all of these themes together in Peirce's words. Is everyone ready for the reading? We've earned it. We're at that stage. Good to go, good to go, good to go. We're good. All right, let's bloody do this. Now I've put the coffee stuff on the shelf. We'll get back to it. Yep. You can think about that some other time. So 3 ascending grades of clearness. First grade of clearness, relying on the salience of what we introspect. When Descartes set about the reconstruction of philosophy, his first step was to theoretically permit skepticism and to describe the practice of the medieval schoolmen of looking to authority as the ultimate source of truth. That done, he sought a more natural foundation of true principles and thought he found it in the human mind, thus passing from the method of authority to that of a priority, as described in my previous paper. Self-consciousness was to furnish us with our fundamental truths and to decide what was agreeable to reason. The distinction between an idea seeming clear and really being so never occurred to him. Trusting to introspection as he did, even for a knowledge of external things, why should he question its testimony in respect to the contents of our own minds? Second grade of clearness, formulating an acceptable definition. On observing that the method of Descartes labored under the difficulty that we may seem to ourselves to have clear apprehensions of ideas, which in truth are very hazy, the German mathematician and philosopher Gottfried Leibniz required an abstract definition of every important term. Accordingly, in adopting the distinction of clear and distinct notions, he described the later quality as the clear apprehension of everything contained in the definition. Yet, nothing new can ever be learned by analyzing definitions, as we saw in the circular definitions above varied. Leibniz realized that perpetual motion machines are impossible, that a piece of mechanism could not do work perpetually without being fed with power in some form was a thing perfectly apparent to him. Yet he did not understand that the machinery of the mind can only transform knowledge, but never originate it, unless it be fed with facts of observation. Third grade of clearness. What then is belief? We've seen that it has just 3 properties. First, it is something that we're aware of. Second, it appeases the irritation of doubt. And third, it involves the establishment in our nature of a rule of action, or say for short, a habit. As it appeases the irritation of doubt, which is the motive for thinking, thought relaxes and comes to rest for a moment when belief is reached. But since belief is a rule for action, the application of which involves further doubt and further thought, at the same time that it is a stopping place, it's also a new starting place for thought. That is why I've permitted myself to call it thought at rest, although thought is essentially an action. The final upshot of thinking is the exercise of volition or the will. And this is thought, and of this, thought no longer forms a part. The essence of belief is the establishment of a habit, and different beliefs are distinguished by the different modes of action to which they give rise. If beliefs do not differ in this respect, if they appease the same doubt by producing the same rule of action, then no mere differences in the manner of consciousness of them can make them different beliefs. To believe that many objects are arranged among themselves in this way, so look at how these dots are arranged to one another, and to believe that they're arranged in this way are one and the same belief. Yet it is conceivable that a man should assert one proposition and deny the other. So respective to one another, all of these dots at the top are in the same position as the ones at the bottom. But one of these circles here is tilted counterclockwise just by one notch. So if you count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at the top there are 5 dots. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. You might be thinking this is one thing and this is another, that one could be true and the other could be false and so on, that these are different things. But in fact, they're the same, right? And you could find yourself believing in one and not believing in the other, right? If a claim were made about them, yet they are the same. You can look at that in the reading more carefully. Another such deception is to make a mere difference in grammatical construction of two words for a distinction between the ideas they express. So we can mistake different words for different concepts. In this pedantic age, when the general mob of writers attend so much more to words than to things, this error is common enough. And unfortunately, again, in philosophy, that happens a lot. There is some vague notion afloat that a question may mean something which the mind cannot conceive. And when some hair-splitting philosophers have been confronted with the absurdity of such a view, they've invented empty distinctions in an attempt to give their non-idea a form not obviously nonsensical. The quibbling character of such distinctions must have struck every mind accustomed to real thinking. From all of these sophisms, we shall be perfectly safe so long as we reflect that the whole function of thought is to produce habits of action. If there be a unity among our sensations, which has no reference to how we shall act on a given occasion, as when we listen to a piece of music, why we do not call that thinking? To develop its meaning, we have, therefore, simply to determine what habits it produces. For what a thing means is simply what habits it involves. Now, the identity of a habit depends on how it might lead us to act, not merely under such circumstances as are likely to arise, but under such as might possibly occur, no matter how improbable they may be. What the habit is depends on when and how it causes us to act. As for the when, every stimulus to action is derived from perception. As for the how, every purpose of action is to produce some sensible result. Thus, we come down to what is tangible and conceivably practical as the root of every real distinction of thought, no matter how subtle it may be. And there is no distinction of meaning so fine as to consist in anything but a possible difference in practice. This is, if you will, a nice soundbite. There is no distinction of meaning so fine as to consist in anything but a possible difference in practice. Our idea of anything is our idea of its sensible effects. And if we fancy that we have any other, we deceive ourselves and mistake a mere sensation accompanying the thought for a part of the thought itself. It appears then that the rule for attaining the third grade of clearness of apprehension is as follows, and this is what's called as the pragmatic maxim. So what I'm about to read now is the pragmatic maxim. Consider what effects that might conceivably have practical bearings we conceive the object of our conception to have. Then our conception of these effects is the whole of our conception of the object. Examples of the pragmatic maxim that we've just read. Let us illustrate this rule by some examples, and to begin with the simplest one possible. Let us ask what we mean by calling a thing hard. So that's the concept we want to define, hard. Evidently that it will not be scratched by many other substances. The whole conception of this quality, as of every other, lies in its conceived effects. There's absolutely no difference between a hard thing and a soft thing so long as they're not brought to the test. Here's a thought experiment. Suppose then that a diamond could be crystallized in the midst of a cushion of soft cotton and should remain there until it was finally burned up. Would it be false to say that a diamond was soft? This seems foolish. This seems like a foolish question, and would be so, in fact, except in the realm of logic. There, such questions are often the greatest utility as serving to bring logical principles into sharper relief than real discussions ever could. In studying logic, we must not put them aside with hasty answers, but must consider them with attentive care in order to make the principles involved. We may, in the present case, modify our question and ask, what prevents us from saying that all hard bodies remain perfectly soft until they're touched, when their hardness increases with the pressure until they're scratched? Reflection will show that the reply is this. There'd be no falsity in such modes of speech. They would involve a modification of our present usage of speech with regard to words hard and soft, and not of their meanings. For they represent no fact to be different from what is, only they involve arrangements of facts which would be exceedingly clumsy. Had it not been for this question, the controversy would never have arisen, and that this question is perfectly solved in a manner which I've indicated. So let's imagine when you say, for instance, right, that a table is hard versus, let's say, a piece of cloth is soft, and you have a friend who says, well, look, I think the table is also soft, but every time you go to touch it, right before you touch it, it becomes hard. What you believe and what your friend believe are exactly the same. There's really no reason. And the only thing that's different about your friend is what they believe is clumsy. There's no reason to believe what they believe. It's identical beliefs. They make no practical difference. Oh, you believe in hard things and I believe in soft things that become hard every time they're touched. Same belief. Whatever we ought to say, whether we ought to say that a force is an acceleration or that it causes an acceleration is a mere question of propriety of language, which has no more to do with our real meaning than the difference between the French idiom il fait froid and its English equivalent it is cold. Yet it is surprising to see how this simple affair has muddled men's minds. In how many profound treatises is force spoken of as a mysterious entity, which seems to be only a way of confessing that the author despairs of ever getting a clear notion of what the word means. The idea which the word force excites in our minds has no other function than to affect our actions. And these actions can have no reference to force otherwise than through its effects. Consequently, if we know what the effects of force are, we're acquainted with every fact which is implied in saying that a force exists, and there is nothing more to know. The elements of every concept enter into logical thought at the gate of perception and make their exit at the gate of purposive action. And whatever cannot show its passports at both of those two gates is to be arrested as unauthorized by reason. Love that quote. Now, pragmatism is the best theory of meaning for the scientific method. I have been led by as much experience to believe that every physicist and every chemist, and in short, every master in any department of experimental science, has had his mind molded by his life in the laboratory to a degree that is little suspected. When you've found the typical experimentalist, you will find that whatever assertion you make to him, he will either understand it as meaning that if a given prescription for an experiment ever can be and ever is carried out in act, an experience of a given description will result, or else he will see no sense at all in what you say. Here are some nuances to keep in mind to close. Pragmatism is the principle that every theoretical judgment, expressible in a sentence in the indicative mood, is actually a confused form of thought, whose only meaning, if it has any, lies in its tendency to enforce a corresponding practical maxim, expressible as a conditional sentence, if then, having its apodosis in the imperative mood. This is a super compact definition, but it's the pragmatic maxim said differently. Do not overlook the fact that this maxim says nothing of single experiments or of single experimental phenomena, but only speaks of general kinds of experimental phenomena. Its adherent does not shrink from speaking of general objects as real, since whatever is true represents a real. Pragmatism is the maxim that the entire meaning and significance of any conception lies in its conceivable practical effects, on how we should act in a practical way, and not merely how we should act as affirming or denying the conception to be cleared up. In order to ascertain the meaning of an intellectual conception, one should consider what practical consequences might conceivably result by necessity from the truth of that conception. And the sum of these consequences will constitute the entire meaning of the conception. This maxim is put forth neither as a handy tool nor as a self-evident truth, but as a far-reaching theorem solidly grounded upon an elaborate study of the nature of signs, which is why next week, we're going to start understanding philosophy of science to see what this is grounded in. That's the reading. A lot there, jam-packed, but that's the reading. Let's just pause. Nav says this answers the coffee question. Nav, share with us how this answers the coffee question while I take a bite of food and try to breathe a little bit because it's hard to read this stuff. The clumsy paragraph. Unpack that for me, Nav. Tell me a little bit more. So if someone says, for instance, tell me a bit more. I want to see what your understanding is, and then we'll fine tune it a little bit, and we'll actually, I think I'm going to invert this order. Let's see what Nav has to say. I think I'm going to switch these around. Because meanwhile, I think this was hard. Am I right that this was hard? My sense is folks have found this hard, even if I tried to do as best I could to set it up. Yeah, we'll need rereads, right? Nav says if it end results are the same thing, even though the actions understanding were a little bit different, they're still the same thing. You got it. You got it, Nav. All right. Let me just get a sense for folks that this was hard. I want to make this concrete. So because I sense that this is hard, I'm going to switch around these two orders and then we'll watch the video. All right. Is that cool with people? We're changing our schedule a little bit. I'm just going to switch this around. We're going to do something more concrete so then you can kind of apply it and then we'll watch the video between the two smart folks. Two old farts are going to talk to each other. And that'll be kind of our victory lap. All right, let's do it. All right. So instead of watching the video, we're going to apply the pragmatic maxim now. Paul believes in theism. Paula believes in atheism. Paul and Paula both treat people nicely. Both avoid lying and cheating. Both take good care of their families. Both favor peace over war, and so on. In fact, and I'm putting this in italic, there is no conceivable situation where Paul and Paula would make different choices or actions. So let me say that again. Paul believes in theism. Does everyone know what the word theism means? Yes or no? Do I have to define that? Or I say Paul believes in God, right? Might want to say that. Paul believes in God. Are we familiar with that word? So I can say that. Paul believes in God. All right. Paula believes in atheism. Do we know what the word atheism means? Paula, sorry. Paula does not believe in God. Paul does not believe in God. Paul and Paula both treat people nicely, both avoid lying and cheating, both take good care of their families, they both favor peace over war, and so on. In fact, there is no conceivable situation where Paul and Paula would make different choices or actions. In this case, are their beliefs the same or different? I want to hear from everyone. I want to see if you get this. I mean, obviously, we're figuring out what would Peirce say, right? And we want to apply the pragmatic maxim. All right, so folks who say different, right? So some people said same, some people said different, right? On the terms that we have now, the correct answer is the same. If you're going to say different, what, according to Peirce, would be required to say that they are different? What would you have to do? If you're going to say different, now the burn's on you to specify something. What would you have to specify according to Peirce? Anyone who thought they're different, what would you have to specify now? What would you have to do according to Peirce to justify that those are different beliefs? Yeah, I'm not sure, Andrew. Those beliefs don't necessarily cause those results. I'm not sure what you mean exactly, right? So you'd have to establish, Andrew, am I right? You'd have to establish that these are not like epiphenomenal, like they're not actually they're doing no work or something like that, right? I mean, that you have to trace a connection between something like that. Owen's more on the right track, I think. Owen writes, prove that they have different actions. Yeah, different actions now, or like, what would you have to do? Let's clarify. Owen's on the right track. Folks, look at what Owen writes. Prove that they have different actions. Let's try to refine that a little bit. See if we can do different formulations, tighten that up a little bit. No, Owen, you're good to go. You're trying stuff. It's terrific, man. We try, we're circling around, and we're trying to understand these ideas. So we're working at it. We're getting closer. We have to practice. It's no big deal. These are not obvious. It's hard ideas. So what would we need to do to say they're different? As things stand, so let me just, religion isn't always employed for moral guidance. That's true, I suppose. I don't know. But we're not talking about religion, are we here? Let's just pause for a second. Theism, right, does not require you to go to church. Andrew, do you agree? Theism just, I believe in God. Lots of people believe in God and don't go to church. They aren't part of any religion. Yeah, that's all we're talking about. So don't bring religion in here, right? Don't bring religion in here. Because you could say, look, Paul and Paula, Paul goes to Gurdwara and Paula doesn't on weekends. And that would be a difference at that point. And you could say they're different. Because let's say if they go to the Gurdwara on account of their belief in theism and atheism, then that would cash out, right? But right now on the board, what we have is not any of that. So what we have right now is just a belief in God, not a practice of religion. So let's just be clarified. So let me add that clarification. Paul believes in God. So Paul believes in theism, or Paul is a theist, right? And Paula is an atheist, right? There's no mention here of adherent to a religious practice or something like that. That's all it is. And notice here what we say. Please read this super carefully. There is no conceivable situation where Paul and Paula would not make different choices or actions, right? So if you go up to Paul and Paula, say you want to go to the Gurdwara this weekend, if one says yes, the other will say yes. If one says no, the other will say no. There is no conceivable situation where Paul and Paula would make different choices or actions. So can't move the target. This is exactly carefully worded, right, to bring out the value of the pragmatic maxim. And then the question is, in this case, and I mean in this case, so looking at what's above here, right, are their beliefs the same or different? Again, you can try again. So I can ask that question again. Are their beliefs the same or different? Owen writes, just hold on. Let's just do another fresh batch of asking that question. Are their beliefs, in this case, so let's not move the target, right? They have a belief. One believes in this, the other believes in this. These are different names, but do they name different beliefs? 2 words. We agree these are 2 words, so we can pause there. Can we agree that I've underlined 2 different words? So let's see if we agree or disagree. Can we agree that I've underlined 2 different words? Yes, okay. Now the question is, have I picked out 2 different beliefs once I've spelled out the 3rd paragraph? 2 different words. So 2 words, how many beliefs? 2 words, how many beliefs? 1 or 2? 2 words, how many beliefs? The beliefs do exactly the same thing on those terms, right? 1 belief. They're the same. And if you're going to maintain they're different, right? If someone's going to say, because this is why I'm using this example, because no one's indifferent about this one, right? I don't know anyone who feels really strongly about gold and the atomic number 79, but we take to heart a lot of these things. But according to the pragmatic maxim, if you are under these conditions, they're the same. And if you're going to say it's different, then what would be required to say that they are different? Some that's not bad, but yeah, would be, Subdish, you're on the way. You're on your way with what you wrote. I think Peirce would say that they're the same until the subject of their thoughts on God are brought into question to spark inquiry. That's not bad as an answer. Keep clarifying that. So what would it take to say that they're different? Different results, Andrew. I like that. Different results, right? You'd have to specify at what point will Paul and Paula act differently on account of these different, so-called different beliefs, right? Reese writes, in at least one case, these convictions would require them to act differently. Reese is on the right track. That's a tight formulation. That's getting better. We're circling around our target. Reese writes, in at least one case, and at least, I like how you worded that. In at least one case, now or conceivably in the future, or does it have to happen now in the past, or in at least one case, these convictions would require them to act differently. Yeah, I like that. See if anyone can formulate what Reese said. It's on the right track. If you can tighten a different formulation, it looks like it's on the right track. We're certainly approximating what we want to approximate here. I'll wait till people are done typing. People are working on it. Oh, when you're making that up, right? It's true, all things being equal, but they would act the same way. They would both protect their family, and you're just adding stuff in the text. But you're right. Let's say Paula and Paul would prefer peace over war, but who cares, right? They would both react the same way, like when it comes time to protect their family. Fair enough. Like, who cares? Let's not make up a false biography of them. That's true. Arjun writes, their base convictions, the things they hold to be self-evidently true, are differing. RK Arjun, pause. Let's look at what Arjun says. So pause. And we'd have to now, according to the pragmatic maxim, if we're going to say are different, right? So what you say, their base convictions, the things they hold to be self-evidently true, are different. What would be required, according to Peirce, to actually back that up? Andrew says, so we're saying that both Paul and Paula's beliefs are such that they both bring about the same actions. That's entirely right, Andrew. That is what this is saying. That's exactly what that is saying, Andrew. This means the third degree would need to be expanded upon. Yeah, we'd have to specify. That's right, Arjun. So we're circling that's the right thing. We need, so let's pause now. Let me just pause. Now I'll take up the reins because I've let you I've grilled you a little bit. Let's let Nav finish typing, right? We need to be open to the possibility that not every word we coin picks out a different beliefs. It's not a one-to-one match between words and concepts and beliefs that we pick out. Nav wrote, I think another example will be that one might not have religious wedding. And if that happened, then that would be one situation where, to take back Reese's language, Paula and Paul would act differently. But your example in particular picks out religion, right? And I've just said, we're talking about belief in God, and that's not necessarily religious. People can believe in God without being religious, right? But you're right. We'd have to, Nav, and you've sort of painted one particular picture, like a wedding, for instance. Let's say Paul gets married, Paula gets married, and one goes to the city hall and one goes to a church. Now, something like that, if Paul and Paula each get married, then let's say one goes to City Hall. Yeah, something like that. Good. So what we have, according to Peirce, if you want to say that they're different, first of all, if there is no different at all, so if this is true, right? Let's take it seriously. Like, if this is true, then the beliefs are same or different. Let's just pause and do that. If these are, let's not change. You can't change what's in this box. That's constant. Let's take that for real. There is no conceivable situation. They're the same or different? Same. According to the maxim, they're the same. All right. And if you're going to say that they're different, then it's incumbent on you to specify, right, a moment where it would make a difference, right? And we have to stand ready, according to the pragmatic maxim, to say that there are two words and one belief. And if you're going to say there's two words and two beliefs, you can't just say there's two words and two beliefs just because. If you're going to say two words, two beliefs, if that's going to be your view, you're going to say two words, right? And you're going to say two beliefs. If that's what you're going to say, then you need to cash out in terms of practical consequences, right? A difference that would make a difference. If you cannot, like pick out, if it's true that there's no conceivable difference, they're the same, right? And yeah, it's incumbent upon you to say what would be the difference that makes a difference, right? And I've pointed out here that one trivial difference would be if you ask Paul, are you a theist? What would Paul answer? So you ask Paul, Paul, are you a theist? What would Paul utter? Paul would utter yes. And if you ask Paula, are you an atheist? What would Paula, are you a theist? So let me just do that again. You ask Paula, are you a theist? Do you believe in God? What would Paula answer? Right. She would answer no. Now there's a difference, but for Peirce, that's not enough, right? So at one point he says in the reading, the maxim isn't just about like figuring out like, well, I have that belief. Of course, I like that word. I like that word. That's not enough. That is not sufficient. Asking them what their beliefs are and saying how they like to call them, that's not enough, right? You need to spell out a difference, choice, or actions that would happen as a result of having that belief, because to believe just is, right, to stand ready to act in a certain way, the way we saw last week, right? And that's the example what I want to give you to meditate on, right? And I think there's a lot on that. Is that helpful? Because we're trying to wrap our mind around the work that this can do. Is this helpful? As I said, I'd do this before the video. Hopefully this was helpful. I think it was, because people are kind of stumped, right? In a good way. Although, once again, I can't read body language, right? If you're a theist, that still that would fall below the threshold of a difference that makes it, that's enough to distinguish between the two, right? So here's the thing. Let me give you another example before we watch the video. All right, baby steps needed, but full review will be fun. Terrific. All right, so let's imagine. Let's just have fun with one further example. All right, I'm going to have a further example. It's a nice blank page. I'll use it. All right, so forget this. I'm going to put this out of the question just for 1 second. All right. You believe in milk. Milk is a thing for you. All right. So let me just have some fun here for a second. Right. I'm going to draw. Oh, this is so fat. Let me just draw a glass of milk. Here's a glass of milk. Right. Here's a glass of milk. I'm going to put 2 glasses of milk. Right. Here's 1 glass of milk. And here's another glass of milk. All right. You pour them with milk. All right. I'm drawing a glass of milk. All right. I'm drawing a glass of milk. You pour 2 glasses of milk. Everyone can do that at home. Pour 2 glasses of milk. Can everyone do that? It's an experiment. So next time, just grab a milk. Nothing's weird, nothing hard, nothing contentious. We don't feel strongly about milk. All right. So you pour a glass of milk, and you say, "What's there?" Right? And you say, "There's 2 glasses, 1 liquid." 2 glasses, 1 liquid. You say, "There's 2 somewhat." So let's say Paul says, right, there are 2 glasses, right, 1 liquid. And then Paula comes, right? Paula says there are 2 glasses, right, and 2 liquids, right? And you ask her, what the heck? What do you mean 2 liquids? You see, on the one side here, there's milk, right? And over here, there's schmilk. She calls this milk, and she calls this schmilk. How many liquids are there? 1 or 2? I mean, there's 2 tokens, right? 2 instances, right? She calls it schmilk, right? There's milk and then there's schmilk. Let's say they come from the same bottle. This was the bottle that poured them. Here's the milk. Here's the schmilk. Yeah. And if you were to ask Paula to justify why that milk and schmilk are not the same, so not the same, so not equivalent, right? What would Paula have to do? If you were to say milk is not schmilk, milk is different from, so I want to write this here, right? Schmilk is different from milk. Show the difference. Milk is different from schmilk. Exactly. You got to show the difference, right? No one feels strongly about milk. So is this clear? We don't generate more beliefs just because we generate more names, right? Beliefs are ways of acting. So if you're going to say they're different beliefs and you want to individuate them and count them as one belief is a different belief from another, you have to specify the difference. Yeah. Did you like the milk example and the theism example? Then we can watch a video. Tell me where you're at. I need to get a sense of where people are at. And then we've earned it. We've earned our nice video. Good to go. People are good. All right. Let's now watch this fun little video. You like the milk example? Wrapped it up nicely? Good. All right. Because no one feels strongly about milk. Right? All right. Well, you might, but enjoy, my friends.
In philosophy, as in so many other respects, it's now the United States rather than Britain that is the chief center of activity in the English-speaking world. But there's been American philosophy of international importance for 100 years now. In fact, Bertrand Russell, in his autobiography, describes the Harvard School of Philosophy as having been the best in the world during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. American philosophy of that period is represented above all by three figures who have since attained classic status: C.S. Peirce, William James, and John Dewey. They are sometimes given a group label, the American pragmatists, but in fact they're more different from each other than that might suggest. C.S. Peirce was born in 1839, the son of a professor of mathematics at Harvard. He was trained from the beginning as a mathematician and scientist, and his paid jobs were as astronomer and physicist. Philosophy was something he did in his spare time, until at the age of 48 he retired to devote himself to it entirely. But this, I'm afraid, led to his being sunk in poverty and debt by the time he died in 1914 at the age of 74. He never wrote a book, and a great deal of his work came out only posthumously, when his collected papers were published in 8 volumes. A near contemporary of Peirce was William James, born in 1842 and also educated at Harvard, from which he graduated in medicine. James became a Harvard lecturer in anatomy and physiology, then after that professor of philosophy, and then after that professor of psychology. Among his best-known books are The Principles of Psychology, published in 1890, The Varieties of Religious Experience, published in 1902, and Pragmatism, published in 1907. He died in 1910. Unlike Peirce, he received international recognition during his lifetime. In this context, it's interesting to mention that the novelist Henry James was one of his brothers, and Henry, for part, if not most of his life, felt himself under the shadow of world-famous elder brother William. The third and most recent of our 3 classical American philosophers was John Dewey, who was born in 1859 and lived until 1952. He spent the whole of his career as a university teacher, first at the University of Michigan, then in Chicago, and finally at Columbia, New York. Few philosophers of any place or time have had such widespread influence on practical and public affairs. His philosophy of education alone can be said to have had worldwide impact, and he was influential in other fields as well. It's difficult to pick a few books from so copious an output, but perhaps I might mention Democracy and Education, published in 1916, Human Nature and Conduct, published in 1922, Experience and Nature, published in 1925, and The Quest for Certainty, published in 1929. To discuss the work of Dewey, James, and Peirce, I've invited Sidney Morgenbesser, Professor of Philosophy at Columbia University in New York. Now let's start right at the beginning of the story. The first of these people in time was Peirce, and it was him who introduced the term pragmatism as a philosophical term. And he introduced it first of all as a maxim for meaning. didn't he? Can you explain exactly what that meant?
Well, it was a maxim for clarification of certain kinds of terms, which are called intellectual terms.
Yeah.
It was not necessarily a theory of meaning for all terms or how to analyze all terms. That he also dealt with in a later book. But in this essay, it was primarily a theory of how one analyzes specific terms or specific ideas, or if you wish, sentences in which these terms are embedded. He was motivated to try to tell someone how he could be clear as his ideas, sort of an approach to give rules for clarification, so that if an agent acts, he at least knows the beliefs clearly upon which he acts. That's the motivation of the background.
Now, what was the pragmatic criterion of meaning? What was that?
Well, I can give it by illustration. You consider the practical effects of the concept, that's well. But let me sort of begin with an example and then see whether we can build up from examples. Right. Let's say if I asked you what you meant when you said something like sugar is soluble in water, I presume you would mean that if I or anyone put the sugar in water, it dissolved. Here, to get clearly in mind what you mean, you would specify, if you wish, some conditional as to what would happen, or what kind of consequences would happen, or what actions or habits the particular entity has that you could activate, as it were, by your action.
It relates the meaning of the concept to an actual or possible action. Or event, or
yes, the meaning would be specified in this conditional.
Right.
So that, now if you take a particular sentence of the indicative, like this particular hammer is hard, or whatever we will attribute the predicate hard, here's the indicative, and the Peircean view is, well, you should be able to translate the indicative into these kinds of conditionals. If it were not possible, if you really wouldn't have a clear concept of mind, well, it's just hard, and you would then suggest, or he would suggest, to try to clarify the specific kinds of things that if the particular entity was acted upon, some particular observable consequence would happen in terms of scratching or what would...
So to bring it down to ordinary speech, what Peirce is saying is that for certain kinds of concept to be meaningful, then their application in reality must make an observable difference to something. If they don't make an observable difference to anything, then they don't have real concept.
Yes, but these are conditionals. They would
That's
be.
right.
Now, this would be is not necessarily a statement that it has carried out.
No, it's about meaning. It's not about occurrence. If I placed it in water, it would.
This is only the clarification of certain terms.
Right. I want to push the discussion a little further along, because although Peirce made this a very substantial contribution to theory of meaning, he wasn't concerned with theory of meaning in a sort of scholastic way, was he? He wasn't concerned with it in isolation. For him, it was all part of a much more general concern with science. I emphasized in my introduction to this discussion how Peirce the man was all his life a working scientist. That's what he was. And he was a logician. And he was concerned to clarify concepts, clarify statements, clarify beliefs as part of a much wider scientific enterprise whose aim was to understand the world and to acquire new knowledge, wasn't it?
Yes.
Can you put it in that context for us?
First I'll amplify some of the remarks about the meaning that you suggest. He said he learned these habits in the laboratory. That's how scientists get clear about his terms. And in the 20th century, some people thought that one clarifies terms in that way, which is called operational definitions. You know when to apply. If certain things are done by you, then these and these would be the observational consequences. But that's the background, and we now go to the other topic you've introduced, the notion of inquiry. Right. I think we could begin first with Peirce.
By inquiry, of course, you simply mean finding out about the world, both in common sense terms and more organizedly in scientific terms.
Right. Yes. And sort of testing the hypothesis in a suitable way, collecting the hypothesis in a suitable way, having certain rules and tell you when the hypothesis or the inference is a well-formed inference, that when the conclusion follows.
It's the whole nuts and bolts substructure of science that we're talking about.
But now I think one could begin first with sort of a theorist of ordinary beliefs, or the ordinary believer, and taking the notion of belief now for granted. Peirce frequently gives the following picture. I say picture because this isn't quite a full presentation, and suggests this picture to a lot of people. That normally we can sort of go along and rely on our beliefs, and then when we run into a problematic situation, one has to have a strategy for how to revise one's beliefs. And there he begins with possible strategies that one could follow. The method of tenacity, you pick some beliefs, you just stick to it. The method of authority, you go to an authority, tell you what to believe. And he gives some reasons why one shouldn't rely on those methods. They're self-defeating. But now the better method is to engage in inquiry, to try to find out by inquiry which particular kind of belief, which is under test, is better than its competitors by actual testing in accord with certain principles. And now, when he does this particular view, he presents another theory, this of how one justifies the beliefs. Thus far, we've talked about the motivation. We engage in inquiry in order to fix our beliefs. And we have to come to a rational decision that we have a right to accept this belief rather than a competitor.
In order to act on it and
yes,
further work on it.
Well, to have some particular rules in the background to form well-formulated beliefs about the nature of the world and then given utilities you act. He's not telling you what you should act for. That's part of the ethics and the aesthetics. But
right.
Now, if by hypothesis one goes a little further, the following picture, once again, is frequently presented as being relevant to Peirce. While we test some beliefs, we're holding some beliefs constant. And then while we're holding some belief constant in one context, we can subject them to check in another context. And the sort of the rationality behind it is this sort of self-correcting process. And we don't have to begin with premises which are certain and indubitable upon which we sort of build our knowledge.
It's like mathematics, in fact. You can always start an argument by assuming something, and then the conclusions follow by a valid argument from the assumption.
We're talking about sort of inductive reasoning or empirical justification.
Yes.
Now, the point behind all of this is not to say that, I mean, part of the point is not merely to say this is the way one should view knowledge if one wants knowledge for a basis for action. Other philosophers might agree, but they would want more for knowledge. Knowledge would have to be a stronger view than that. And to counter that stronger view, he sometimes talks that we can't get certainty. And the Cartesian arguments for getting certainty don't actually support the conclusion that some philosophers thought it does. So it was a picture of how knowledge could and justification could go on. It was a claim that other pictures not merely are not needed, but they can't be, for a variety of reasons, maintained. And therefore, it turned out that very people identify Peirce with some theory of fallibilism. Everything is revisable. There's nothing fixed, etc.
Now, this introduction of the term fallibilism is very important. And indeed, Peirce was a pioneer of the whole idea, and it was a revolutionary idea in its day. Until and including, I think, virtually the whole of the 19th century, Western man regarded science as a secure and copper-bottomed and safe and sure and unchanging body of knowledge. The scientific knowledge was certain knowledge, and it was, for that reason, incorrigible, unchanging. Peirce introduced, and was one of the very first people, if not the first person to introduce, the notion that this is not so, that all science is corrigible, all science is fallible, that we use scientific theories for as long as they work, but we must be prepared to replace them if we come up against difficulties with them. Now that's an orthodoxy in the 20th century. All scientists take that view in our time, but they certainly didn't in Peirce's.
Currently, lots of people take this view of fallibilism sort of as an aim of science, that science shouldn't aim as a complete theory, that one should never say, I've got it now, I've just got it. But that science, by definition, is open to perpetual revolution. Now, that is a thesis which sometimes is associated with fallibilism, which I'm not sure quite what to say about, but it's a different...
Well, let's not go into that now.
But when it comes to science, one gets a different picture from Peirce. The picture is a scientist entering into a community. He's part of a community investigation of investigators. Truth, if you wish, is a sort of property of the community in a sense which I'll try to specify. The actual scientist is not there as an individual. He's sort of understood primarily as a member of the group, And then we can talk about inquiry in general. And there,
as a group activity and as an institutionalized.
Right, you enter into an institution which is rational and reasonable.
Yeah.
And then one engages in inquiry. And Peirce has lots of things to say about the stages of inquiry, as for example, the inductive phase, when hypotheses are put up to test, and the reasons for accepting them as testable. Deductive phase, when they're the consequences are noted, and the inductive phase, when the actual results are assessed. And he has a great deal to say about all of these things, for which he may be credited as a forerunner of diverse kinds of people like Nagel or Popper, who have differences among them, but would all claim that this is along the lines that he has suggested. So we have this picture of science, and part of Peirce's later motivation is to try to see what justification he can give for someone entering into this kind of a community. But now, given this view of science, and also the view that if one wants to say that science captures the real or what's out there, one has to sort of take it this way, because whatever the real is, or whatever we think is out there independently of us, one can't actually think that's only accessible to an individual person. The real should be accessible to the community. It's independent of any particular agent. And now the agent and the inquiry, well, what's its goal? And here one has two aspects of Peirce. One aspect is, well, what sense could we give for truth in this particular context? After all, we very frequently think of each individual belief may be wrong, even though I think it's true, it may be wrong. And this way, what sort of guarantee, if you like the word, of truth is there? What concept can we give to truth? And he tries to develop the notion that when we say a given belief is true, what we have in mind is that this opinion actually will survive and be embedded into the final body of science, if that is the correct way of talking.
Now, up to this point, we've been...
My friends, there you go. What was it like to follow that conversation? Did you follow along? Did it start to make sense after 2 or 3 weeks of training? Lots of themes we looked at. What'd you think of the video? Let me zoom in on our list now. This is what we can do, right? Let me confirm. You've encountered these notions. Fallibilism. Can I check? Type check if I can check it. We know what that is. Let's just do a checklist here. Check or no check? Good. Check. Community of inquiry. Check or no check? We know this. Good stuff. Interpretability. It will be interpreted. If it's a sign, that's what being a sign is. It opens itself up to being read at some point. It'll be interpreted. It'll make a difference to something, somewhere, someone in the future, even if it doesn't now. Grades of belief. Now we know grades of clearness. First grade, second grade, third grade. Mental images, definitions, and specifying the tangible differences. Check. Good. Belief. Belief is a habit. It's a way of acting. It's a habitual way of acting. Can we check that? We know what belief is in a Peircean sense. Can I check that? Check. Real doubt versus paper doubt. Right? Real doubt's the rupture of your beliefs. Paper doubt's just calling things into question just cause. That's the skeptic's attitude. Right? It's artificial. Inquiry, figuring stuff out, trying to generate hypotheses to test them. Can we check that? Right? It comes in different grades, as we mentioned. There's common sense inquiry, like kids figuring stuff out, and then there's scientists figuring stuff out. But we're all trying to figure stuff out, and we're still in that boat. The fixation of belief, different methods of doing it, tenacity and so on. But science is the best way to do it. We want our beliefs to be prolonged. Can we check that? Check. Now we've added some more ideas, right? Truth as a maxim, the pragmatic maxim. You want to define a term? Fine. Tell me what concretely it's going to mean. Like, let's get ferried. What does that even mean? Well, it means that if we meet, we bump knuckles, right? What does it mean? What does it mean? What does the concept even mean? You don't just take it face value just because you have a word that you have a concept. And then truth is the limit. We converge on it. If the coffee is hot, we will converge on it, right? Good. Look at that. We did it, right? we got more ideas to think about, but epistemology, we can sort of say we're done. And I knew we'd have a lot on our table, so there's some breathing space now, right? There's no entry due next week. So what do we do now? Well, you got to do some rereading. Do we agree? There's some rereading here. The Peirce packet 3, we went over it once, but there's a lot in there when he talks about different formulations of the pragmatic maxim, right? Also, you can begin to draft your first entry if you want. That's fine. You can totally do that, right? So you can draft your first entry. Your third entry. Doesn't necessarily mean I've opened the space where you can turn it in. You can write your entry either on what we talked about this week or what we're going to talk about next week or whatever, but it's not due next class, but rather 2 classes from now. And next week we do philosophy of science. Remember when we left off, Peirce said that the pragmatic maxim actually stems from a careful study of science. So prepare for some mind-blowing stuff. Next week's going to be hard they're hard in different ways, you'll see. Right? Today you have to go over the reading, and the formulations are very precise, and they're kind of circling around this idea that to define something, you have to specify the difference that it makes, right? If you're going to say it's schmilk as opposed to milk, you got to tell me what's the difference. Like goat milk and milk, there's a difference, right? But if you're going to say milk and schmilk, right? Yeah. Exciting material. Good. And it's nice when I can find a video. I can't always find videos. They're few and far between. This is high level stuff, right? Good. So on that note, if you have any further questions, tell me your questions. If you're crystal clear on what you need to do now, because it's your turn, you have to say crystal clear, because we're going to wrap up. I don't know about you, but I'm tired, and we did a great workout. Just like take a shower after a good exercise workout, right? Same thing. People are crystal clear. You know what you got to do? Awesome. Okay, good. And next week, I wouldn't say smoke some cannabis, but it's gonna be wild. Bring an open mind. Bring an open mind next week. All right. I hope you always bring an open mind, but it's gonna be particularly mind-blowing stuff. All right. So on that note, my friends, let's say goodbye. Right? Yeah. Cool, Reese. Is this something you want to talk to me in private or right now? Just wait along at the end. I'm gonna stick around at the end. By the way, I always stick around. That's office time. Yeah, sure. We'll wait at the end, Reese, so we can talk. This goes for everyone. You're invited to talk to me at the end of class if you want to talk about anything. I'm sticking around till you're gone, right? So good. On that note, my friends, let's say goodbye. We had a good class, jam-packed, lots of stuff, and like, yeah. Bye, Owen. Sonia, see you next week. Hannah, take care. Shing, take care. Steven, see you next week. Sumdish, thanks for class. Well, thanks for you make it possible. So goodbye, man. So long, Andrew. See you next week. All right, my friends. Jam-packed class. That wraps up the epistemology part of our nice survey of Peirce's ideas. Big ideas. Lots to think about. As befits a philosopher that influenced the whole school of thought, they're game changers. And so they need time for you to wrap your mind around. Do that on your own. That's homework. We can only accomplish so much in class. But if you watch the replay carefully, I've given you all of the pieces of the puzzle to put together. So you should be able to do this. All right. You don't have an entry due next week, so take the time to think about stuff. It's always good to draft, your ideas and to write them out on paper. It makes it clearer. And then we talk about philosophy of science next week. So what's this whole science stuff about? All right. Take care, everyone.